Chapter 474. Lu Ha recognized that it was the sword Chenong had used the day before. He didn't know what kind of sword it was, but he knew that since it was watercolored and wasn't affected by the magnetic force, it must be something like 10,000-year-old ice. He envied Qin Daoyu and said, "Qin Daoyu is so lucky. He has a flying sword that isn't affected by the magnetic force. Even though our Tai godly wood swords are spiritual, they aren't sharp enough to be considered high-class flying swords. Even the 49 10,000-year divine wood swords that Master uses are just low-class flying swords. They're not as sharp as fellow Taoist Chen's sword aura, and they're not as powerful as his." "Master, you mean that Qin Daoyu has mastered the magnetic force as well. I don't know how strong he is, but I'm sure he's much stronger than me." Not only him, even Tian Qi couldn't help but raise his eyebrows when he saw Chun Ang's sword light. He looked serious. Tian Qi's eyes were much sharper than Lu He's. He could tell that even though the shape of the sword had changed, it was still made of metal. To be able to refine metal into such a shape, it had to be extremely powerful. Tian Qi had only heard of one flying sword with such a high quality. That was the Nanming Li fire sword that Patriarch Bodhidharma had used to kill demons and beasts. Even though the Amasek's purple and green twin swords were powerful, they didn't belong to the Nanming Li fire sword. The Nanming Li fire sword was made of fire. It didn't have the same shape as the Nanming Li fire sword, but it was made of metal. It was extremely sharp and pure like fire. Even though Qin Ang's sword wasn't as powerful as the Nanming Li fire sword, it was like water. Tian Qi thought, even though this sword is powerful, it's not one of the few treasures in the world that aren't affected by the magnetic force. If I use my full power, he won't be able to resist it. He also cultivates the magnetic force. How could he not know that? Even though Tian Qi was confused, he didn't retreat. Tian Qi made the 49 godly wood swords turn into many cyan sword lights. He was also a master of swordsmanship. The 49 sword lights were released at the same time. Instead of being chaotic, they worked together and formed a net made of godly wood swords. He did not rely on the sharpness of the flying sword. He only used his skillful swordsmanship. The momentum of the sword was heavy and strong, carrying a vigorous mana. It squeezed the space where Chenong moved his sword. With this swordsmanship, he could be considered as one of the top experts in the sea. It did not disgrace his great reputation. Such a spectacular display. It attracted the cheers of the spectating disciples. Chenong waited for him to make his move and only responded normally. It was only when the divine wood sword net was set up that he let out a clear shout and pointed his finger. Only then did the 12 primordial stars split into a circle and transformed into 100 zhang-long silver rainbow. It swept across the sky, and with the sharpness of the flying sword itself, it tore the sword net into pieces. He had only used a little of his swordsmanship to defeat Tian Qi, but he had managed to defeat Tian Qi. Tian Qi tried to defend himself. His 49 godly wood swords were being bullied like children. Even though he tried to defend himself, he couldn't. He was humiliated in front of all the disciples. He shouted, "Qin Daoyu's swordsmanship is powerful, but we are competing with the magnetic force. Watch my spells." As soon as he finished speaking, he shrugged his back and grabbed at the void with his hand. Dozens of balls of lunar metamagnet divine lightning shot out. Suddenly, smoke and light shone for thousands of miles, illuminating the lone peak. The sound of wind and thunder shook the earth. The metamagnet divine lightning exploded in the air, shocking Cheneng's protective sword circle to the point that it fluctuated and became a little messy. Tian Qi was happy. The lunar magnetic thunderbolts could be released and condensed at will. If his opponent couldn't defeat them, his body and soul would be destroyed. But if it met with a metal treasure, it could be absorbed by the lunar magnetic pure qi. Now that the lunar magnetic thunderbolts had exploded and turned into Tai magnetic pure qi, it must have stopped Cheneng's swords. Tian Qi of the lunar magnetic pure qi started to attack again. Origin magnetic true qi, was formless and incorporeal, only a stagnant force. Logically speaking, if Chen-Ong wanted to use it freely again, he would have to refine his flying swords. But Chen-Ong used his Milky Way Dharma power. The 12 yuan Fun Tian Chi of the 12 yuan Fun Tian Chi of the Milky Way Dharma power turned into 6 beams of sword light. They were invisible and invisible. The lunar magnetic pure Chi couldn't absorb them. The 6 beams of sword light turned into 1. Tian Chi of the lunar magnetic pure Chi couldn't block them. They were all torn apart by the sword light. Tian Chi of the lunar magnetic mountain didn't even have time to summon the magnetic mountain divine light. Chen-Ang's sword light touched his throat and he was defeated. Apart from Tian Chi, nobody could see through Chen-Ang's sword lights. Even so, Tian Chi was so furious that he almost fainted. Chen-Ang's sword lights were like a thunderbolt, like a raging ocean. Apart from Tian Chi, nobody could see through them. Without holding back, the magnetic essence Chi on the magnetic peak transformed into a greenish-white Chi and enveloped Chen-Ong. Then he raised his hand and a beam of magnetic divine light flew into the air. With the help of the magnetic essence Chi from the magnetic peak, it immediately expanded to the size of an acre. It shone with a golden light that was so dazzling that it was difficult to open one's eyes. Wherever the magnetic light went, the fine iron would lose control and be absorbed by it. Esteemed Tian Chi wanted to capture Chen-Ang's 12 water sword lights and suppress them under the magnetic mountains. But unexpectedly, when the magnetic light shone on the waterscape sword, not only did he not feel the suction force, but he also borrowed the force to speed up. As he leaped forward, the sword light could no longer be seen. He only felt a chill on his forehead and reached out to touch it, only to find that his right eyebrow had been kicked off. When Tian Chi saw his eyebrows droop down, he shouted furiously. He was furious. He had nowhere to vent his anger. He hated Chen-Ong to the core. He activated the magnetic mountain and released a large amount of pure magnetic Chi, which fused with his pure magnetic godly light. He had spent a lot of time and effort on the island to activate the strongest defensive spell he had ever created, the pure magnetic great deployment spell. The divine light and the primary magnetic essence Chi on the peak of the magnetic peak turned into a 5-color divine light, covering everything within a radius of 40 to 50 miles. Starting from the magnetic peak, it shot down diagonally and connected to the ground in all directions, forming a 5-colored smoke screen that enveloped Chen-Ong within. The 5-colored smoke screen was shrinking inwards, trying to pull Chen-Ong into it. The divine light of primordial magnetism was inside. No matter how powerful one's supernatural power was, one could not break through this invisible and intangible power. Relying on the absorption power of the true magnetic earth veins of the North Pole, the golden ship of fate and the gold and iron magical treasures in Chen-Ang's dantian trembled violently, almost breaking out of his body. Chen-Ong let out a long laugh. The 9 Bends Yellow River Grand Formation in his sleeve unfolded, suppressing his body. The 12 primordial waterscape swords suddenly merged into one, transforming into a ring of light between real and fake, between existence and non-existence. With a casual wave of his hand, it enveloped the entire copper coconut island. He shouted, "Life and death between existence and non-existence. 12 primordial stars as one day." The 12 swords formed a mysterious spell formation which divided the area within a radius of 1,000 miles into 2 different worlds. Chen-Ong stood outside the 2 worlds. It seemed like the whole world was in his swords. With a flick of his finger, a speck of metamagnet divine light fell into the circle of sword light, absorbing and suppressing the endless 5-colored mist. Then the extreme metamagnet divine light suddenly swallowed the endless metamagnet divine light, as if it had eaten too much, and returned to Chen-Ang's dantian to digest. Only then did Chen-Ong let go of the sword light. Only then did the world within 1,000 suddenly return to normal. The disciples of the Copper Coconut Island looked confused. Only Tianqi Esteemed's face was pale, and he gave up resisting. Chun-Ong smiled and said, Tianqi Esteemed's cultivation is profound. I have learned a lot from this competition. However, if we continue, it will hurt our friendship. How about we stop now? What do you think? Tianqi Esteemed's lips moved. After a long while, he replied calmly, just as you said. He had been defeated by Chun-Ong, and his arrogance had been destroyed. He didn't dare to provoke Chun-Ong anymore. Chun-Ang's method of training was very rough. It was not as good as the spring breeze and rain of Mount Amay. Chun-Ong just wanted to destroy Tianqi Esteemed's arrogance with a tyrannical method. Chun-Ang's arrogance had been deeply imprinted in Tianqi Esteemed's mind. If he didn't do this well, he would become Tianqi Esteemed's enemy. Chun-Ong was very brave, and that was why he had dared to torture Tianqi Esteemed like that. It seemed like the result was good. At least Tianqi Esteemed felt that he was one generation lower in front of Chun-Ong. It was a psychological bottom line. Everyone had a different psychological bottom line. For example, colleagues had a higher self-esteem than their leaders. If they scolded their colleagues, they would turn against them. But if their leaders scolded them, they would be submissive. Chun-Ong had crossed Tianqi's bottom line many times, which made Tianqi lower his bottom line. Many things that he couldn't accept before, now that their positions had changed, he could understand them. Chapter 475. The disciples on the island understood what was going on. They didn't dare underestimate Chun-Ong anymore. Even though Tianqi was in Copper Coconut Island, he had seen how terrifying Chun-Ang's sword had been, so he didn't think that Chun-Ong couldn't defeat him. Tianqi glanced at the disciples and went back to the cave. He even moved Chun-Ong to the left to show his respect. At that moment, Puda had already come back. Two disciples dragged him to Tianqi. He didn't dare argue with Tianqi, so he just stared at Chun-Ong. That guy didn't know how to hide it. Everybody could see that. Puda hadn't seen the fight between Tianqi and Chun-Ong because he had been tortured. The other disciples who had seen the fight sighed in their hearts. Chun-Ong had brought about his own destruction. Because he didn't have good relationships with people, no one went to remind him at this time, and he was left to deal with the calamity. As expected, Tianqi smiled coldly and told his subordinates to hold him down. If he didn't repent in the future, he would be sent back to the reincarnation cycle. The atmosphere in the palace became warmer and warmer. The atmosphere in the palace warmed up. Chun-Ong smiled and said, Tianqi, my friend, I've been amazed by your power. You can gather and disperse the Taiyin magnetic force at your will. The Xiantian magnetic force formation is a whole new world. I admire you a lot. I regret that I didn't meet you earlier. Chun-Ong was just being polite. Tianqi didn't take his words seriously, but the two of them were fighting because of face. Now that Chun-Ong was giving him face, Tianqi was a bit disappointed. He knew that Chun-Ong was 10 times stronger than him, so he couldn't get back at him in the future. Therefore, they decided to let bygones be bygones. Tianqi bowed and said, Qin Daoyu, what are you talking about? I can use the North Pole cosmic magnetic field to cultivate, but my lunar magnetic field is not pure. Only by raising the essence qi of the clouds and gathering the power of the Tai heavenly thunder can one cultivate the divine light. But it has no Taiyin quality and is extremely heterogeneous. Therefore, it can only be named the Tai divine light of magnetism. How can fellow Taoist cultivate the wonders of the Taiyin divine light alone without any geographical advantage? Chun-Ong smiled faintly and said, Cultivators of Taoism have the right to communicate with each other. As the ancient people said, wealth, law, land, and companionship are the most important things. Since Tianqi has addressed me as fellow Taoist, I don't dare to be stingy. Tianqi heard that Chun-Ong wanted to learn from his sect. He was a bit angry, but he didn't dare to show it. He explained, My sect's magnetic Tao was created by studying the magnetic pure evil aura. Because the magnetic Tao is a branch of the North Pole, It doesn't have two magnetic poles. It's affected by the chi of the earth, so it's not pure. I need the magnetic mountain to help me. Chunong had other thoughts after listening to his words. He asked in reply, "Fellow Taoist, if your primordial magnetic mana is successful, you must borrow the primordial magnetic malevolent chi of the north and south poles to temper yourself. If you don't have a treasure that can restrain the primordial yin and primordial magnetic genuine chi of the sun, it would be difficult for you to succeed. I only know of one such treasure, and it is the cosmic light plate hidden in the jade cliff of Amei. This treasure is related to the establishment of the extraterrestrial divine mountain of Amei in the future." Tian Chi smiled bitterly and said, "The path of cultivation is difficult. That's all." Chinong, on the other hand, thought of his own magnetic golden ship of fate. If this treasure was completed, the north and south poles would be as easy as walking on flat ground. But before it was completed, he could go to the stars beyond the heavens, but he could not get close to the magnetic land of two poles. This treasure was made of a huge amount of refined iron. Before the yin and yang magnetic divine thunderball of fate reached the 36th layer, it would also be restrained. Originally, the restrictive spell had to reach the 54th layer. The lunar and solar magnetic pure evil aura in the yin and yang magnetic divine thunderball had to be combined to form the Tai Chi magnetic pure evil aura. Only then could the magnetic pure evil aura break through the magnetic pure evil aura and travel between the two poles. But the lunar and solar magnetic pure evil aura was the best place to cultivate. Otherwise, it would take a long time. Chinong, on the other hand, was confident that with his own magic power he would be able to force his way through the magnetic field and enter the divine sand of the South Pole. But now the golden boat only had 22 layers. He didn't know how long it would take. If he could get Tian Chi's help, he could use the magnetic mountain to suppress the magnetic pure evil aura. Then he would be able to cultivate it in the yin and yang magnetic divine thunderball. When he thought that, he secretly told Tian Chi a few things. He told him about how to use the magnetic energy to reach the Tien level. Tian Chi immediately felt refreshed. He looked at the information with his soul, as if he had just received a priceless treasure. When he talked to Chinong, he became absent-minded from time to time. He studied the magnetic treasure, and as expected, he improved a lot. He forgot about his grudge against Chinong and started to ask Chinong questions. Chinong took the opportunity to ask Tian Chi some questions. Tian Chi had been studying the magnetic Tao for hundreds of years. Even though he wasn't as knowledgeable as Chinong, he still had a lot of experience. The two of them let down their guard and started to talk to each other. The less experienced disciples had already left. Only Tian Chi's disciples, like Lu Ha, who Tian Chi thought highly of, could stay and listen. They all learned a lot from each other. Some of the disciples even improved a lot. Tian Chi could see that Chinong really wasn't trying to steal their legacy. They were just talking, and Chinong was even more generous. He answered all the questions he asked, which made him seem like a stingy person. Chinong didn't ask any more questions. But Chinong didn't ask any more questions. He felt ashamed and thought, Chin Daoyu is from the mystic door. He understands the magnetic Tao much better than I do. He knows a lot about the magnetic Tao. How could he not have any powerful techniques? How could he be interested in my treasures? I'm still fussing over a small thing like that. That's not right. He didn't know that because of Chin Ang's complicated background, everything he had learned and comprehended had to be organized into a system. His skeleton was perfect and the key was there. It was just that he lacked flesh and blood to fill it up. Therefore, the key tricks that he cherished were useless to Chinong. Instead, it was the words of experience and subtle understanding that could provide Chinong with data to fill his flesh and blood. Therefore, Chinong was happy to see it and didn't care about his concealment. This time, Chinong had truly convinced this overseas itinerant immortal. In this way, there were many things that could be discussed in depth. Chin Ong pondered for a moment, then smiled and said, I have the same thoughts as fellow Taoist. The land of the two poles of the true magnetic field is of great importance to people of the magnetic essence like us. We must borrow the strength of our fellow Taoists for this. I see that fellow Taoist has the same idea as me. In order to break the two extremities magnetic, baleful stars, I have refined a precious treasure. I hope fellow Taoist can help me. After that, he took out the golden boat. The golden boat was floating in the air. Its two wings were shining with golden lights. Tian Qi sensed that the golden boat was releasing an incredible magnetic strength, which wasn't restricted by his magnetic mountains. He looked at it carefully and realized that the golden boat contained an incredible magnetic strength. Chin Ong wasn't lying when he said that it was a treasure that could help him travel between the two Jinqi realms. Chapter 476. Chin Ong released the restrictive spells on the golden boat so that Tian Qi could see what was going on inside. Tian Qi was shocked. He thought, luckily, Chen Daoyu didn't want to make things difficult for me. He only used his sword skills to defeat me. Instead, it is my heart that is not in the right, and my actions are too extreme. If he were to use this magic treasure to counter me, even if I have the innate magnetic grand formation, how can it be a flying magic treasure? The Xiantian magnetic formation can control yin and yang. Even I know that the Xiantian magnetic formation is connected to the Xiantian magnetic formation. Chun Daoyu's treasure has many powerful lightning spells. If he used them all at once, the entire Copper Coconut Island would turn into a sea of fire. No matter how big my house is, I wouldn't be able to survive. He didn't have any scruples anymore. He asked, I'm not strong enough to help you make the treasure stronger. What do you want? If Tian Qi can help you, I'll do my best. Chan Ong laughed and said, This is not difficult. I won't make it difficult for you. Every 129,600 years, there will be a great calamity in the world. Although it won't bring the world into chaos and return to the primordial world, it can still cause tsunamis and landslides within thousands of miles. Floods will flow. Fiendish flames will soar into the sky and turn it into a sea of fire. I'm sure that the next minor Yuan tribulation will occur under your Taoist's cave abode, and the consequences will be severe. I have obtained the fate of the 4 seas, so I have to worry about the tribulation sent by the heavens. At this time, the tribulation has not happened, and the days have long been set. In the future, it will be related to the prosperity of Amei. Although I could have eliminated the matter of Yi Xiao attaining the Tao a long time ago, I have to take into account the karma of the same path and the calculations of the senior, so I can't trigger this tribulation in advance. When Tian Qi heard this, his primordial spirit was alerted. Even though he didn't know how to predict the future, with Chanang's help, he was able to see what Chenong was saying. He was shocked and said, I know what's going on under the island. The magnetic mountain is pressing down on the ground, so people can't escape. Who would have thought that there would be such a disaster? If you know that, why did you leave me and my disciple here? It's better to get rid of them. Chin Ong hesitated for a moment before he shook his head and said, Previously, when Long Browshenren was still alive, he had already foreseen the impending doom. For this reason, he had worshipped the green seal and prayed silently to the way of heaven for 49 days. He had made a great vow and bequeathed to the disciples of Amei to encourage them to shoulder the heavy responsibility of this calamity. Moreover, the heavenly Tao had its own rules. Before the time came, there would definitely be a calamity when the tribulation began. The minor Yuan tribulation is different from the others. It is a tribulation of time and has its own timing. It can only be triggered and eliminated, not suppressed. Tian Qi said angrily, Why didn't the Amei sect tell me about this? They must be plotting against us, master and disciple. They want me to be the one to open the tribulation and cheat me of my hard work. They want me to be in a difficult situation, and I might even have to lower my head to them. How hateful! Chen Ong didn't take his words seriously. From Tian Qi's point of view, Amei had gained a lot of external merit points and a favor. Chunong had gained nothing, but he had to accept Amei's favor. How could they do that? But from an objective point of view, Long Browshenren had foreseen the external merit points. So why should he have a share? Amei, Guang Qingzi, and many others had to return the external merit points. How could they be so kind as to share it with him? The Amei sect was a righteous sect of the mystic door, but it wasn't a charity. They had saved him once because they were on the same path. How could they think of anything else? Chunong had also taken the external merit points from Amei. If he didn't care about the cause and effect and wanted to take all the external merit points, it would be too much. Besides, he always liked to do good deeds. He knew how to be a good person. How could he agree with Tianqi here? In this tribulation, the formation of the Yellow River of 9 tunes might not be able to turn misfortune into fortune like you or Island did. There were many great formations in this realm that gathered the essence of the Great Way and had the ability to suppress fate energy. The Yin and Yang dust formation could suppress the fate energy of Mount Amei and lead the central land. The formation of the Yellow River of 9 tunes could regulate the CI of the 4 poles and suppress fate energy overseas. However, the fate energy of this tribulation was at the 2 poles. Chin-On had to deduce and perfect the real innate magnetic formation to suppress the fate energy of the 2 poles. The primordial magnetic formation couldn't be compared to the 9-turn Yellow River formation. It wasn't the way of true water-sky river. Chen-On only knew a little about the way of magnetism and was far from mastering it. He was far from being able to use the primordial magnetic formation to suppress the north and south poles. Combine the Earth's axis, mix yin and yang, and adjust the evil spirits. With this in mind, Chen-On just smiled and said, "That's all for later. My golden ship is made of thunder, fire, and magnetism. My friend, please control the magnetic peak and help me suppress the golden ship of good fortune into the Earth's lungs. With the help of the Earth's fire, poisonous wind, and magnetic field, the ship's restrictions can be tempered. When it reaches the 36th layer, it can choose an opportunity to escape to the 2 poles." Tianqi thought for a long time and then rejected. "My friend, how can I dare to leave the island? Am I not afraid that when I come back from the 2 poles, the Earth's fire will explode and kill my sect? Qin Daoyu, I will help you. I just want to thank you for your advice. I will guard the Earth's lungs on the magnetic peak and not let anyone trigger it." Chinong smiled and said, "My friend, you don't have to do this. I naturally have a way to make you feel at ease." He pointed at the towering magnetic peak outside the cave abode and said with a smile, "My friend, do you remember the formation you used in the last battle? I will help you perfect this formation and refine this magnetic peak into a supreme treasure like the jadeite cliff. I will also release a little of the accumulated power in the underground so that you will be able to suppress it. If you still don't feel at ease, I can entrust your disciple to guard it." Tianqi was overjoyed when he heard this. If he could get Chun-Eng's help to perfect the innate magnetism formation and refine the magnetic peak into the formation map, he would really have nothing to worry about anymore. He would be able to obtain a supreme treasure that could suppress fate and make the Copper Coconut Island's fate even more lasting. After the 2 of them came to a decision, they asked Chinong to move to the entrance of the magnetic peak. They showed the formation map of the magnetic peak to Chinong and told him where the entrance of the Earth's lungs was. The Taihu fire was hidden deep in the Earth's lungs and was separated by the ancient layers. It was unexpected and couldn't be predicted by ordinary divination. Even if a powerful cultivator tried to predict it, he wouldn't be able to predict it. There were 13 layers in the ancient layers. They were either as hard as steel or extremely hot. Each layer was harder than the previous one. Chun-On used the golden boat to enter the Earth's lungs. He saw that the ground was very deep. First, there was a layer that was as hard as steel. The golden boat pushed aside the soil and rocks. With the help of Tianqi's magnetic peak, they soon reached the bottom of the magnetic peak and entered the Earth's lungs. After a few thousand feet, they arrived at the source of the poisonous fire in the Earth's lungs. The Earth's lungs were filled with yin qi. There was a sea of lava under the Moon Island's volcano. There was also a sea of fire under the magnetic peak of the copper Coconut Island, where there was water, fire, wind, and thunder. It was like an ancient world. Chun-Ong knew that the Taihu fire was hidden deep in the Earth's lungs. He couldn't predict where it was unless the karma was going to erupt. Because of the magnetic peak above their heads, not only did the Taihu fire accumulate, but there was also a lot of yin qi in the Earth's lungs. There were also many monsters hiding there. Water, fire, wind, and thunder were also forming ancient scenes. The first Yuan heavy water, one of the 7 kinds of pure water, was formed by yin qi. One drop weighed 129,600 kilograms, which was exactly 1 yuan. That was why it was called the first Yuan heavy water. Chapter 477. Most of the reason why Chun-Ong was willing to come down was because of the first Yuan heavy water. After all, no matter how rare the opportunity to refine the golden ship of fate's restrictions was, it was not as important as the improvement of Chun-Ang's heavenly river dermic powers. Under the crust of copper Coconut Island, due to the magnetic peaks, all kinds of yin and turbidity were concentrated. Other places did not have such good conditions. There were many holes in the lungs. Before the yin and turbidity qi condensed into boiling lava, it would turn into wind, thunder, water, and fire. Because there was a meandering magnetic vein, there were also many gigantic magnetic peaks that looked like floating islands and mountain ranges floating in the air. The underground nightmare wind shuttled between them. Because this wind was formed by the flow of heavy, turbid air, it was the most vicious and terrifying. Under the nightmare wind's caress, even a person made of metal would have their flesh and bones thinned and their bodies disintegrated. The yin and yang magnetism in the lungs was the most sensitive. Because it was trapped in a narrow space, it was the most sensitive. Any disturbance would destroy the fragile balance of the 2 poles and trigger the yin thunderstorm. Chun-Ong steered the golden ship of fate all the way forward, and no one knew how many yin and yang magnetic forces filled the lungs were disturbed. The violent yin thunderstorm triggered the strong wind, and the wind and thunder were several times more terrifying. The bone-chilling wind mixed with the divine thunder that could destroy 100 miles away stirred the lungs of the earth into a terrifying world of dancing silver snakes and turbulent storms. However, the violent storms could not get within 3 feet of the golden light of the golden ship. Chun-Ong, on the other hand, could seize the opportunity to absorb the essence of the mother wind in the wind, which was also an excellent material for crafting wind magic treasures. Meanwhile, the golden ship of fortune flapped its wings on its own. The 2 sun god fire wings were like a pair of huge thunder wings, absorbing a large amount of thunder essence from the yin thunderstorm to nourish itself. The yin and turbidity qi accumulated in one place and condensed into the first Yuan water. This was something that Chun-Ong had to get his hands on no matter what. Chun-Ong took over the control of the innate magnetism grand formation, and at the same time he used the magnetic rays to search the 3,000 miles of underground lungs. It was as if he could see the sky and hear the earth, and the divine rays of magnetism were feeding back to him. In Chun-Ang's eyes, the earth and rocks were like nothing. Only the spots where the dark and turbid gathered were blocked by clouds of different colors, and he could not see clearly. He saw that in the 3,000 miles of underground lungs, the strange insects were swimming in the air, and the evil beasts formed from the dark and turbid were also attacked by Chun-Ong together. The 3 red-haired strange corpses in the lead had long manes, red faces, and fangs. They flew very quickly in the ground and turned into a poisonous smoke that sprayed towards Chun-Ong. One of them was hiding in the poisonous smoke and emitted a phosphorescent fire. When it came into contact with a Taoist cultivator's body, it would turn into yin fire and burn the body. Only a treasure of true water could extinguish it. Chun-Ong recognized these strange creatures. They were the zombies that cultivated in the soil for 100 years. Under the moon, They shed their stiff bodies and grew a body full of red hair. They were called flying ikshas. These evil beasts were the remains of cultivators that were born after being infected by the earth's turbidity. Their bodies were as hard as diamond, and they could escape through the earth and fly. They were originally one of the strongest transformations of the zombies. Seeing the 3 zombies covered in red hair and the Inchi penetrated deep into their bones, Mengchi knew that they were the best ones that were about to transform into the red-haired roar. Even the rogue immortals had to retreat, not to mention in the earth's turbidity. Even their lair was even more ferocious. The 3 flying ikshas were dressed in ancient clothes. They seemed to be people from the Shang and Zhou dynasties. They wore feathered clothes and star crowns. They looked like they were from ancient times. They spat out the Yindan they cultivated to attack Chenong. The Yindan was mixed with hundreds of phosphorescents. When each of them exploded, they exploded into Yin fire that was about an acre in size. However, they were all collected by the 9 bends, yellow river formation in his sleeve. The 3 flying ikshas were enraged after losing the inner Dan that they had worked hard for hundreds of years. This Yin Dan was the key to their transformation in the future. How could they let it go? They did not even bother to hide their bodies and pounced towards Chenong, relying on their body of diamond. They stretched out their huge claws to grab Chenong. If it were someone else here, they would not be able to do anything to their bodies that were comparable to magic weapons. However, they were courting death. They actually crashed into the golden ship of fate. Under the impact of the golden ship, no matter whether they were flying yakshas or red-haired roars, even a mountain would collapse. Chen Ong only felt the golden ship under his feet shake slightly. He saw a flying yaksha's bones and flesh turn into mud. The Yin fire in its stomach spurted out of its 7 orifices. In the blink of an eye, it was crushed into pieces. The other 2 escaped fast enough and were only brushed by the aftershock. Even so, most of their muscles and bones were broken. Chen Ong felt that they were useful, so he controlled the golden ship to suppress them. After killing these 3, the rest of the evil beasts did not pose a threat and scattered in panic. Chen Ong also found Yin Spring. He drove the golden ship to cut through the veins of the earth and collected more than 50 drops of first Yuan heavy water. When he wanted to search again, Tian Qi on the ground became impatient and asked with his primordial spirit. Chen Ong had no choice but to run towards the Eye of Fire. He released the 9 bends, yellow river formation, and connected the Yin rivers underground to prevent alarming the Tai fire. If there was an accident, he would have enough time to suppress it. At this moment, Chen Ong had already broken through 2 layers. One layer was as hard as steel and could only be restrained by Chen Ang's golden ship of good fortune. The other layer contained the remains of ancient creatures. They were all huge and ferocious. One could vaguely see the majestic bodies of ancient creatures. Even though they had been buried underground for a long time and had been eroded by the Yin Qi, there were countless phosphorus fires hidden in the white bones, which were controlled by the flying yiksha. In order to break through this layer, the slightest bit of movement would alarm the remains of the archaic creatures. At that time, countless phosphorescent flames would fly out like stars and explode together. It was likely that it could burn everything within 3,000 li and set off boundless Yin flames. At the same time, it would trigger the qi of the ancient creatures. Chen Ong had the golden ship to protect him, so even though he was not afraid, it would still be very troublesome. He had to carefully break through this layer. The last layer was the boiling liquid of the earth lung, which was extremely hot. Chen Ong saw this and used his primordial spirit to peep at the secrets of heaven. He then found out that the earth heart fire eye was in this layer about 50 miles below. However, the poisonous fire of the boiling liquid was very powerful. Later on, Ishio was trapped here and understood how to use fire to control fire. He almost released the earth heart fire eye and caused a disaster. Chen Ong steered the golden ship of fate and didn't need to worry about the heat of the boiling lava. After 50 miles, he could feel the heat pressing down. The pure white power of Tai Huang fire was boundless. The earth core fire I nurtured countless essence of fire. The entire Tai Huang fire I was like a wriggling fire dragon, bearing its fangs and brandishing its claws. Its wings were already formed, and a short horn vaguely appeared on its head. Chun-Ong knew that the day the fire dragon turned into a dragon would be the day the Tai fire I would be born. Tianqi Hermit used the circular light technique to check through Chun-Ang's hand. Seeing this, his face turned gloomy, and he said in a bad tone, "What a good earth Lung Tai fire! It has already become a climate, and it is difficult for humans to control it." Chapter 478. It was not easy to suppress the explosive power of the Taihua. Tianqi esteemed would not be able to do it. Because of this, when he saw Chun-Ang's strict arrangement, he realized his own shortcomings. Chun-Ong looked at the Taihua Chi. It was like a dragon, bearing its fangs and brandishing its claws like an evil dragon. There was a short horn on its head. Chun-Ong knew that the Taihua Chi had already become a dragon. The Taihua Chi was naturally able to sense it. It knew that it would be a great sin when it was born. So it took the shape of a dragon and planned to become a dragon. If it escaped, the earth turbid Xian Yin Qi could transform and become a primordial flaming dragon. It could control heaven and earth and kill and commit endless sins. Tianqi esteemed saw what Chun-Ong saw through the round light spell, so he no longer doubted Chun-Ang's words. These days he had been practicing the magnetic peak day and night, drawing the hidden pure evil chi of magnetism to set up the inhibition. This was to prevent the Taihua dragon from escaping when Chun-Ong attacked it in the future, which would lead to more sins. Chun-Ong assisted him with the Yellow River of Nine Bends formation. After all the preparations were done, Chun-Ong saw that the Taihua dragon had not opened its eyes. He knew that fate is on my side. If it was a little more sensitive, it would have sensed it, but it didn't, which meant that fate was not on its side. Seeing this, Chun-Ong naturally would not let go of this opportunity. He controlled the North Pole magnetic evil spirit to project the essential magnetic chi onto the golden ship of fate. The colorful divine light of metamagnet gathered from the vast underground magnetic veins and was projected down from the top of the magnetic peak, shining directly on the divine fire wings of the golden ship of fate. The pure golden wings produced a huge devouring force out of nowhere, swallowing the divine light of metamagnet and transferring it to the yin and yang creation, divine thunderball. The yin and yang of the thunderball turned the colorful magnetic light into a black and white magnetic talisman. It started to refine the inhibition of the yin and yang creation, divine thunderball, under Chun-Ang's control. When the thunderball was wearing down the primordial magnetic essence chi, it purified the five-colored magnetic light into two colors of black and white. One was the Tai-Yin, while the other was the Tai-Yang. The two colors combined and shot towards the fire dragon that was formed by the fate of Tai-Yang. The black and white divine light twisted and brushed off a thin layer of Tai-Yang red mist from the fire dragon's body. The mist was swallowed by the two fire wings of the sun god and turned into their own nourishment as usual. Chun-Ong sat cross-legged on the bow of the golden ship of fate. He controlled the golden ship to absorb the evil chi of the north magnetic evil chi and the Taihua dragon, and turn them into true talismans to refine the inhibition. Tianqi esteemed was controlling the natural magnetic formation. The colorful magnetic light kept coming from the magnetic veins, which was absorbed by the divine thunderball. The divine thunderball had the yin and yang creation, divine light of magnetism, which kept removing the power of the Taihua dragon. This fire was neither gold nor iron, and it was not even close to the five elements. Its essence was a bit of mysterious yin, which was restrained by the yin and yang creation divine light. The black and white divine light of magnetism twisted and produced a wisp of mysterious yin fire, which was absorbed into the golden ship and turned into a true talisman to refine the inhibition. At first, it was just a wisp of mysterious yin fire, and it needed Chun-Ang's help to refine it into true talismans to refine the inhibition. Later, the inhibition was upgraded, and the power of the golden ship grew. So it didn't need Chinang's help anymore. It could digest the mysterious Yin fire on its own. A few days later, it could absorb a few wisps of the Tai Hua dragon's red mist at the same time and turn them into the inhibition of the golden ship. This time, the efficiency was increased by more than 100 times. In less than a month, the thick protective red clouds, colorful lights, fire clouds, and red mist of the Tai Hua dragon transformed from the Tai Hua dragon were only left with a thin layer. This immense fiery aura was the key to the Tai Fire Horned Dragon's growth. Now that the golden ship had reduced it to this small amount, the Tai Fire Horned Dragon felt uncomfortable. The huge Tai Fire Horned Dragon's claws and teeth looked ferocious as it started to struggle slightly. Chinang saw that it was about to wake up. He pointed at the golden ship beneath him, and a black and white divine light of metamagnet that was several times thicker shone on it. The divine light of magnetism shone on the Tai Hua dragon, and the Tai Hua dragon became calm again. At the same time, he urged the golden ship to cast the yin and yang divine rays of magnetic light 5 times in a row until the red mist around Huaqiu was the thinnest. Huaqiu swayed uneasily, and an inconspicuous scale fell off from its tail. Once again, it turned into a thick red mist and wrapped its whole body inside. The golden ship was like a bottomless pit, swallowing the divine light of magnetism sent by Tian Qi at the same time. The Tai Hua dragon absorbed the Tai Hua dragon's profound qi. The Tai Hua dragon didn't increase its temperature, and the Tai Hua dragon's profound qi didn't expand anymore. The Tai Hua dragon's profound qi was shrinking, and the Tai Hua dragon's profound qi also disappeared. Chinang took the opportunity to let Macho out. She coiled on the golden ship of fate's 2 giant sun god fire wings and breathed in and out the red mist. This red serpent was originally of the yin element, so although the Xian Yin Tai Hua Qi was violent, it was suitable for it to breathe in and out, cleansing its body and improving its nature. In the enormous firepower that the golden ship was constantly spitting out, what Mo Cho absorbed could not even be counted as impurities. The divine light of magnetism sent out by the golden ship was as big as an acre. Every time the divine light of magnetism shone on the Tai Hua dragon, the Tai Hua dragon's profound qi was like a steel knife. Even though Chinang used the divine light to eliminate the Tai Hua dragon's profound qi from time to time, the Tai Hua dragon's profound qi was still struggling. However, the Tai Hua dragon was trapped by the 49 magnetic qi ropes of the natural magnetic formation, with the yellow river of 9 bends formation trapping its entire body. The fiery eye-horn dragon was like a dragon trapped in a shallow pool. All it could do was stir up the boiling lava and struggle with all its might in the lungs. Most of its consciousness was sealed by Chinang's spell, and its body was suppressed by the 2 great formations. Although it roared and roared in the lungs, baring its fangs and brandishing its claws, stirring up a sea of fire that threatened to boil the earth's crust, the Tai Hua dragon was trapped in a small inhibition spell, so it couldn't do anything, let alone break through the earth's crust. The sea of fire it released couldn't penetrate the golden light of Chen Ang's golden ship of good fortune, and it couldn't reach Tian Qi's treasure either. Even the Tai Hua dragon, who was lying on the divine fire wings of the sun, couldn't hurt the Tai Hua dragon. However, if the Tai Hua dragon acted rashly, it would be easy for the golden ship of good fortune to see through its weakness. It's time. If I keep weakening it, I'm afraid I'll destroy the minor Yuan calamity. The essence-fused divine light has already worn away the spirituality and suppressed the extreme fire's true self-consciousness to its limit. According to my calculations, in another 3/4 of an hour, the extreme fire eye's original consciousness will awaken. Chinang thought to himself, let's take this last chance and play it big. As soon as he finished talking, he jumped onto the golden ship and landed on the Tai Hua dragon's head, where the Tai Hua dragon's acupuncture points were located. This time, the black and white divine light was like a steel knife. It turned into a Tai Chi diagram and cut the Tai Hua dragon's horn. The horn was cut off by 3 inches. The divine light wrapped around the horn and brought it into the golden ship. The divine light then sent it into the divine thunderball. After suffering such a heavy injury, the fiery dragon, transformed from the Taihuyen, could no longer suppress its furious consciousness. It suddenly opened its eyes and woke up, roaring towards the sky. Its gigantic body that was tens of thousands of feet long tumbled in shock. The pure white Taihuyen's endless firepower poured in all directions. Chapter 479. The fire dragon, which was formed by the Tai Fire Eye, struggled angrily, shaking the earth's crust and causing the primordial chi in the earth's lungs to tumble. The wind, earth, water, and fire all stirred up the earth's lungs like it was the end of the world. Countless strange creatures, formed by the earth's turbidity, dispersed. The hanging stalactites and ice, the boiling lava in the earth's crust, the phosphorescent white bones, everything exploded at the same time. Endless cold ice, divine thunder, fire, and earth's turbidity were stirred up, trying to turn the 10,000 miles underground into powder. Even Tian Chi, who was sitting on the magnetic mountain, could sense this change. The magnetic peak shook incessantly. The aftershocks on Copper Coconut Island roused everyone with a start. They only thought it was an earthquake. Only Lu He and a few others were able to guess the inside story. They were secretly horrified, their minds wandering indeterminately. Amidst the countless disasters, a golden light stood still. No matter how many divine thunders and fires attacked, it could not be shaken in the slightest. Instead, it emitted a vast golden light, suppressing everything, trying to calm the tremors. The 9 rivers turned into chains, with the underground River as the main body, absorbing endless chi and firmly locking the fire dragon. Tian Chi was amazed and thought, he really is the direct descendant of the primordial innate God, the disciple of the mystic door. Even 10 of me wouldn't be able to suppress the Tai fire test. I wonder how powerful he was in his previous life. He was only a teenager when he reincarnated, and he didn't even have the fruit of the disbanded celestial way, but he already has such power. Feeling the immortal and indestructible gold in the golden light of the golden boat of good fortune, he was even more shocked. The gold is immortal. If this golden boat of good fortune is complete, it will be like the fruit of the golden celestial way. It will be indestructible. Since ancient times, only Guang Chungzi became a golden celestial without ascending. Even Taoist Long Brow from Amei Mountain ascended with the fruit of the celestial way. However, fellow cultivator Chen's Dharma treasure has a trace of a golden immortal's Taoist rhyme. That's really shocking. Tian Chi immediately put away the inexplicable delusion in his mind and activated the magnetic mountain restriction spell. The multicolored magnetic light from the innate magnetic formation shone in all directions, gradually calming the chi in the lungs. With the help of the magnetic light, the golden light emitted by the golden ship of fate suddenly expanded and absorbed all the multicolored magnetic light. It rotated in the golden ship's restrictive spell and turned into a strange black and white light. As soon as the light appeared, it froze the great fire horned dragon in place. The black and white colors swirled, forming a hazy gray chaos. The great fire horned dragon acted as if it had met its natural predator. It was so intimidated that it dared not wreak havoc. It hurriedly retracted its power and hid deeper into the earth's lungs. Mo Cho, who was entrenched on the fire wings of the sun god, saw that the fire dragon had escaped. Her body expanded several times in size against the wind, and she opened her mouth to swallow the specks of mysterious yellow that fell from the broken horn on the fire dragon's head. Macho, who was sitting on the fire wings of the god of sun, saw the Tai fire dragon escape. Her body expanded in the wind, and she opened her mouth to swallow the yellow light that fell from the Tai fire dragon's broken horn. After shedding its skin, Macho shrunk to only 3 inches long and went into Chun Eng's sleeve to digest what she had gained. After shedding its skin, Macho shrunk to only 3 inches long and went into Chunang's sleeve to digest what she had gained. Tian Qi, who was guarding the magnetic mountain, also sensed the change. He was relieved when he felt the Tai fire eye disappear. He wasn't an anomaly like Chenong. He didn't have the confidence to deal with this minor Yuan tribulation. If the Tai fire force exploded, no one on Copper Coconut Island could escape except for him. Moreover, even if he escaped alone, the karma he created would be enough to make him fall into depravity for countless lifetimes, and he would never be able to ascend to immortality. Tian Qi was on top of the magnetic mountain. He had the advantage of time and place. He had the magnetic Great Deployment spell to help him. Chunong had been trapped by the magnetic Great Deployment spell, and that was the perfect time for him to take revenge. He had used the magnetic mountain to suppress the earth meridians, and Chunong wouldn't be able to come up. However, such wild thoughts didn't arise in his heart at all. It wasn't for any other reason than because after this incident, he felt that if Chunong wanted to kill him, it wouldn't be much more difficult than crushing an ant. This person's dermic powers, divine arts, and even treasures were the best of the best in this realm. He was at the level of an ordinary heaven immortal, and he was far from being comparable to him. A golden light flashed in the earth veins, and a golden beam of light shot out from the magnetic mountain. The natural magnetic Great Formation seemed to be invisible, which surprised Tian Qi. He looked carefully and saw Chunang's golden boat of good fortune in front of him. A young Taoist priest was standing on the boat, wearing a feather robe and a star crown. He was smiling at him. The young Taoist smiled and said, "I've done it. I've refined the golden ship to a high level. With your help, I can break the polar magnetic high baleful qi and go to the divine mountain. After this setback, the power of the great fire eye has been greatly reduced. I'm afraid it won't be able to recover its vitality even when the minor Yuan tribulation begins." Tian Qi smiled bitterly and asked, "Since you have such power, why do you need me? You can go to the polar magnetic high baleful qi. Why do you need me?" Chunong shook his head and said, "Of course I need your help, but that's for later. I need to prepare for the trip to the polar magnetic high baleful qi. How about this? 20 years later, I'll go with you to the Copper Coconut Island. What do you think?" What else could Tian Qi say? He nodded and agreed. The two of them returned to the cave on Copper Coconut Island. When Lu Ha saw the two of them returning, a strange expression appeared on his face. He was about to step forward and pay his respects when Chunong stopped him with one hand and said, "You and I are fellow Taoists. There's no need to be like this." Lu Ha forced a smile and said, "Senior and my master are of the same generation. How could Junior dare to be rude?" Chunong smiled and said, "Let's just call each other Taoist friends. We're in the same generation as you and your master." Lu Ha asked again and again, but Chunong didn't let him. He agreed and said, "If that's the case, I'll take my leave." When they stepped into Chunang's cave, Princess Lingsha came up to welcome them. Chunong saw that she was full of magic energy and knew that she had been cultivating diligently for the past 2 months. He was slightly satisfied and casually gave her some pointers on the key points of cultivation, asking her to carefully memorize them. The golden ship of good fortune had improved greatly. Even without the help of Chunang's power, it wasn't afraid of the magnetic mountain anymore. They stopped at the port on the island. Chunong stayed on the Copper Coconut Island for a few days. Every day, apart from teaching Lingsha's cultivation, he would discuss Tao with Tian Qi, practice the magnetic spell, or walk on the beach and enjoy the scenery of the South China Sea. Chunong was very respected among the disciples of the Copper Coconut Island. Except for Lu Ha, no one dared to talk to him as if he was from the same generation. Chapter 480. Chunong opened the magical treasure pouch. Sure enough, there was the copper coconut spirit tree wrapped in a clear magical light. There were also more than 100 other kinds of divine woods, which were used by the island's disciples to refine their swords. Tianxiang novel, Tu Chunong waved his hand. and a clear light wrapped the spirit trees and sent them into the yellow river of 9 Bends formation. He then planted them in the Pearl Palace. He thought for a while, then smiled and said, "How can I repay Tian Chi's great gift? I know that he loves these copper coconuts as much as his life. Now that he has given me so many, I am afraid that he has used up all the copper coconuts on the island for hundreds of years. I don't feel good about it, so I will return the gift with this. I hope that you will not be stingy with this gift and give me some face." Chen Ong pointed his finger, and a coral mirror flew out from his sleeve and landed in Luhi's hand. He had refined many tool embryos in the volcano of Moonchild Island, and this was one of them. It was made of coral, and the divine light of a 1,000-year-old clam in the sea was the mirror. It was elegant, and it shone brightly in Luhi's hand. As the eldest martial brother of Copper Coconut Island, how could Luhi's eyes be compared to those wandering cultivators who cherished a crude treasure as much as their life? However, he could see that this mirror was full of spirit light, and its quality was excellent. Although he had many treasures, none of them could compare to this. If he succeeded in refining it in the future, it would definitely be the best treasure in his hands. He then heard Chinong say, "I still have many treasures in my hands, but most of them are made of metal, and they are not suitable for you to refine on Copper Coconut Island. This coral mirror is made of 10,000-year-old blood coral from the sea and a 1,000-year-old divine clam. It is called Sea-Splitting Mirror, and it is especially good at flying through the sea. The divine light of the mirror can reach you in the blink of an eye, and it has the same effect as the first escape art of the mystic door, spiritual light escape. I will give it to you to refine your demon to protect yourself. You can ask your master for the restriction of metamagnet divine light to refine. It has other uses." Lu held the coral mirror and listened to Chin Ang's instructions. Suddenly, an idea flashed in his mind, and he injected his prime magnetism magic power into the mirror. Immediately, a divine light that was more than 10,000 feet long shot out from the mirror towards the magnetic peaks. Lu saw this and quickly retracted the divine light, but in his panic the mirror shook and accidentally shone on one of his junior martial brothers. The treasured mirror's divine light retracted and forcefully pulled this junior martial brother over to Luhi's front. He didn't have the slightest strength to resist and could only stare dumbstruck in the divine light. Even his mind was frozen. Lu tested the power of the mirror and was shocked. He quickly dispersed the divine light. He saw his junior martial brother looking around and didn't know why he suddenly came here from 10 miles away. Although Lu was surprised by the power of the coral mirror, he couldn't help but feel happy. He thought, Chen Dao's mana is really profound to be able to give me such a powerful treasure so casually. And the other junior martial brothers still treated the 1,000-year-old copper coconut as a treasure and didn't want to give it to Chen Dao. How would they know that the mystic door has endless treasures? Chen Dao's mana is profound, and he easily gave such precious treasures to others. As expected, we, the disciples of Copper Coconut Island, have been associated with the wandering cultivators too much and have been stingy and short-sighted. He raised his head and looked at the golden light of Chen Ang's golden ship of creation disappearing into the sea, and sighed in Chen Dao's heart, "I'm afraid that hundreds or thousands of such treasures are not as important as a trace of Dao." He felt a little sad when he thought of this, but when he thought about it, his primordial spirit rose, and he became more spirited. Chen Dao has his own Dao of immortality, but what about me? Even if I have thousands of treasures and countless powerful spells, if I don't achieve immortality, I won't be able to ascend, and I will definitely become a pile of dust and ashes in the future. If I only seek a moment of freedom like before, and don't care about immortality, won't I be wasting the opportunities and efforts of this life? On the waves of Copper Coconut Island, Lu silently made a wish to achieve immortality, and suddenly there was a little more determination in his eyes. He looked at the direction where Chen Ong left, and there was a change in his body that made people look at him with new eyes. After this farewell, I will never forget my wish to achieve immortality." Lu clapped his hands and sang loudly on the shore, sending Chenong off. A few hundred miles away, Chenong stood on the golden ship and suddenly smiled. He urged the golden ship to go straight to the eye of the South Sea. Chenong was tired of controlling the boat and wanted to devote himself to his research. He handed the golden boat over to Lingsha to control. Firstly, it was to train her to be able to travel the 4 seas and use her mana. Secondly, it was not the job of a disciple to be enslaved. If the master needed something, the disciple would do it for him. Since there was such a useful slave, why would Chenong bother? Chenong was used to using the golden ship, so he didn't notice it until Princess Lingsha received it and compared it to the others. Then he realized the convenience of the golden ship. The situation in the sea was unpredictable, and there were storms, sea beasts, lightning, giant waves, dragons, pirates, and all kinds of dangers. Even the mermaids, who were born to be part of the sea, had to face many dangers, and there was always the risk of going missing or dying. It was not until she piloted the golden ship that Lingsha realized the benefits. Not only was it faster than any other ship, but it also saved her from the suffering of riding sea beasts. Even her dragon whale was troublesome to take care of, so how could it be compared to the golden ship? Furthermore, within 3 feet of the golden light, no storm could enter the ship, and people on the ship would never suffer from the wind and waves. Even in the midst of the storm, the golden ship was as stable as land. If the sea beasts blocked the way, and the pirates robbed them, she only needed to activate the divine thunder on the ship from afar to turn them into charcoal. If she got tired of looking at the surface of the sea, the golden ship could even dive into the water and enjoy the scenery. Chenong opened up a cave in the belly of the golden ship that was about 1,000 miles wide. He took a piece of land from the South China Sea and practiced all kinds of Tao of creation in it. He used the Yellow River of 9 Bends to collect a lot of first Yuan heavy water in the lungs of the earth. Although it was not as endless as the other 2, it was enough for him to cultivate 1 innate water dharma to the initial level. He let Macho out and asked Lingsha to keep her company while he isolated himself in the cave of the golden ship and practiced the 3 Tao of innate water. 1 drop of first Yuan heavy water could turn into thousands of water in the world, and when it melted, it would form a lake. If Chenong splashed a few drops of Tianyi true water on the ground, he would be able to create great rivers like the Yangtze River and the Yellow River. With the Tianyi true water that Chenong had infused with the Tianyi true water, if he had the intention to spread it on the ground, he would have long turned Middle Earth into a swamp country. Other than the barely populated highlands, the people in other places would all be fed to the fishes and turtles. If the Xianming true water in the Heavenly River Dharma was used, its power would not be any weaker than the first Yuan heavy water, and the consequences would not be any better than the flood formed by the first Yuan heavy water. Thousands of miles of ice, billions of lives would be frozen, and a small half of the planet of Shu, which was tens of thousands of times the size of the Ming Dynasty, would become a frozen land in the North Pole. If Chenong used all his strength, it would not be difficult to turn the whole world into the Cambrian period. As for the first Yuan heavy water, it was the heaviest. A single drop weighed 1 yuan. Furthermore, the greater the amount of true water gathered, the heavier it became. If Chenong turned it into rain and rained it down, the turbid air would surge up and shake the mountains and rivers hundreds of millions of miles away. It would revert back to the turbid air and turn the solidified material state of the Shushan planet back to the primordial Qi state. Chapter 481. Even though the sea was vast and the golden ship was fast, it didn't take long for them to reach the eye of the South Sea that Chenong was looking for. Princess Lingsha was from the sea race and was familiar with the sea. Under her control, the temperature of the sea quickly dropped and the golden ship sailed into a cold sea. Chenong leaped onto the sword beam and flew up to the clouds in the sky, looking around. He saw 2 barren reefs in the distance. One of them was only a few hundred feet above the ground. It was flat and round like a mirror and was a few acres big. As expected, this should be the cold spring of the eye of the South Sea that Golden-Beard's slave mentioned. The shape of this barren reef is the same as what he said. Back then, he, the two phoenixes, and the three phoenixes met Tiger Head, Zen master of the East Sea's evil dragon islands, Long Wind Cave. He was slaughtering a strange beast in the eye of the sea, the three-star beauty salamander, and took its inner core to refine the essence of the mysterious mother. He was hit by the heaven-sky mountain's young man's godly thunder. At first, when I heard what he said, I didn't think too much. But now that I think about it, there is more to it than meets the eye. The heaven-sky mountain's young man is one of the most powerful itinerant immortals in the sea. It was not a coincidence that Tiger Head Zen Master was punished by him. There must be another reason. I want to open an abode here, but I'm afraid there will be some trouble. Chinong sighed and waved his hand. The creation was put back into his sleeve. He took Lingsha with him and turned into a silver light that landed on the barren reef. The South Sea was located in the extreme south. It was the warmest sea among the four seas. However, there was an extremely cold sea current within 1,000 miles. Even though it nourished countless sea creatures, it made the surrounding climate dry and cold. It was not like the hot and poisonous land in the south. The barren reef was not more than 100 steps wide and could be seen with one glance. Although it was in the eye of the sea, it was not as important as the Purple Cloud Palace's immortal island. If Chun-Ong wanted to be like the Purple Cloud Palace, closing the sea eye and leaving only the immortal island as a facade, he would probably have to move mountains and fill seas. Chun-Ong opened his sleeves and was about to release the golden ship of fate to escape into the sea. Suddenly, he saw an invisible conveyance light landing on a desolate reef not far away and secretly peeping at him. Chun-Ang's Dharma I saw through her true appearance. It was a woman who looked to be in her late 20s. Looking at her invisible mana, it was quite extraordinary. This woman was hiding on the desolate reef, and she didn't know that Chin-Ong had already discovered her. She was cultivating on a deserted island nearby when she suddenly saw a ray of treasure light shooting up from the nearby sea surface. It was like a meteor streaking across the sky, leaving a silver mark on the sea surface. Because she was concerned about an extremely important secret here, she couldn't let it go, so she secretly came to investigate. This person stopped on this desolate reef. It looks like he isn't just passing by. He came here intentionally. Could it be because of that secret as well? 10 years ago, because of a great opportunity, I saw the senior in the eye of the sea, spitting out multicolored light, and discovered this secret. Ever since I received the teachings of that senior, my mana improved greatly. Since then, I have been cultivating here in seclusion. This eye of the sea is secluded, and no one came here for 10 years. Why are there people coming to disturb me recently? This woman was also from an unorthodox sect. She was originally useless and only had some mixed and weak mana. Although she received some true teachings and her mana improved greatly, seeing that Chun-Ang's conveyance light was pure, she knew that she wasn't his match. She was also worried that her family's secret would be discovered, so she suddenly became anxious. She couldn't help but scold. Those famous sects are really too much. It's hard for us unorthodox, sect, loose cultivators to cultivate. We had some fortuitous encounters by chance, but they still want to disturb and destroy us. The last time that person came, he almost killed all the 3-star beauties in the vicinity. This time, this person is probably going to ruin my plans. Seeing that she didn't move, Chin-Ong thought for a while and felt that there was no need to be so careful. With his cultivation, it was fine even if he was a little rash. He reached out and pointed, and the metamagnet divine light shone on the reef. The surging metamagnet divine light wrapped the entire reef, and with a slight tremble, the female cultivator was pulled over. Princess Lingsha, who was at the side, also felt something, but with her master here, she didn't dare to act rashly. Seeing that the female cultivator was stunned by Chin-Ong, she went up and circulated her Xianming mana. She slapped her body and sealed her mana. At the same time, she used a cold current to wake her up. This female cultivator was different from the many strange races in the various countries across the sea. She looked like someone from Middle-earth. Her lips were tightly shut, and she stared blankly at Chinong. Her breasts rose up and down, and she was a little scared and a little embarrassed from being caught peeping. Chinong smiled faintly and asked, "So it's a fellow Taoist. But why did fellow Taoists peep and violate my taboo?" The female cultivator pondered for a while before she organized her words and calmed the fear in her heart. She said, "Tan Yun doesn't dare to offend fellow Taoist. I accidentally saw fellow Taoist light, and I didn't want to do such a sneaky thing. It's just that a fellow Taoist came here to secretly kill a strange beast in the sea. 3-star beauties. My own mana needs to borrow the essence of this beast's enigmatic mother in order to merge and improve, so I kept a close eye on it. I was worried that fellow Taoist would have the same intention, so I could only secretly ask around. I hope fellow Taoist can forgive me." Chinong nodded and said, "I see. Then I don't blame fellow Taoist for this matter." However, he seemed to be curious and asked, "But does fellow Taoist know the origin of the person who killed the 3-star beauties? Is it also for the essence of that strange beast's inner core enigmatic mother?" Tan Yun frowned and said doubtfully, "That person's mana is strong and his actions are cruel. How would I dare to meet him? He hid himself under the protection of a senior. I only know that he often lured the beauties out and used his flying sword to kill them. The blood essence and souls of the beauties were all sucked away by him, leaving only dried corpses. Such a terrifying method. His origin must be extraordinary." Chinong thought about the spells that could steal the blood essence and souls of living beings. The most famous one should be the blood god of the blood divine cult. However, after Dang Yin was sealed, this spell did not appear in this world for a long time. Similarly, the mysterious Yin Beast gathering banner of the Heaven Lud cult was also the same. Now that the calamity of a May cult had not arrived, and the evil spirits were still in hiding, it was quite strange that something like this happened. However, other than these famous spells, there were many other demonic spells that could harvest blood essence and souls. As far as Chinong knew, there were no less than 7. Now that he had not seen those corpses, it was difficult to make a judgment. If he really killed with his flying sword and could harvest blood essence and souls, then this Su's origin was probably not simple, and his power was amazing. Chinong saw that Tan Yun's eyes were wandering, and was afraid that she was still hiding something, so he lied to her. "I have heard of this form of death. It seems that the blood god Sun Dang Yin, the long-brow spiritual master's junior brother, cultivated the great Azura secret technique, Blood God Sutra. When ordinary people and beasts were pounced on by his spell, their blood essence would be sucked dry, and their souls would be imprisoned, never to be reincarnated." Sure enough, after hearing what he said, the female cultivator Tan Yun's body stiffened, and a look of fear appeared on her face. She hurriedly asked, "Is what fellow Taoist said true?" Chinong nodded, and saw that she suddenly bowed to him. He quickly pointed to the void, and an invisible force appeared out of nowhere to support her knees. He only heard her say, "I still hid some things before. Please don't blame me, fellow Taoist." The primordial spirit of an itinerant immortal of the East Sea in the past is still trapped in the eye of the sea here. Because he committed a fire tribulation, his corpse was dismembered in this eye of the sea, and he borrowed the power of the cold spring to protect his primordial spirit from being hurt by the Yin fire. However, after the fire tribulation subsided, his primordial spirit was sealed in this cold spring of the eye of the sea. Only during the summer solstice and dragon boat festival every year can he collect the yang qi of heaven and earth to melt some of the 10,000-year-old ice essence that sealed him. Because of some opportunities, I have a half-teacher relationship with this itinerant immortal, and he taught me the heavenly book to practice. Previously, when the demon came to the eye of the sea to kill, I inadvertently took care of him once, and he used a spell to plot against me. Fortunately, there was that senior to help me, and I was spared. However, it allowed him to see a trace of that senior's actual situation. After searching for a few days, he didn't see any trace of us, so he left in a hurry. I thought that he had already given up, but after hearing what fellow Taoist said today, only then did I know that he actually practiced such a vicious spell. He must be after that itinerant immortal senior's primordial spirit, and he will come again in the future. I'm afraid that I won't be able to resist him alone. The next time he comes, he will definitely have a way to break our spell of invisibility. Fellow Taoist, please help me release the senior's primordial spirit and escort him to reincarnation. In the cold spring, there are a number of magic treasures, Taoist books, and elixirs sealed by the senior when he was alive. I am willing to share a portion with fellow Taoist. Of course, Chin-Ong refused to believe all of it. He used the divine light of Metamagnet to illuminate the surface of the sea, and the divine light of Metamagnet of Een spread out to an area of an acre. It went deep into the sea, and sure enough he saw some clues. In the cold spring of the eye of the sea, other than a few 3-star beautiful turtles, there was a faint 5-colored light circulating. There were indeed traces of prohibition, but how knowledgeable was Chin-Ong! He was not as gullible as the female cultivator Tanyan. Chapter 482. The Metamagnet divine light circled around the restriction a few times, and Chin-Ong could see through some of it. He couldn't help but sneer in his heart as he thought to himself, "This person is really up to no good. When I look at the restriction restraining him, the clear light is contained within, and the Tao rhyme is hidden. It's obviously the mystic door's orthodox, 3 pure one's mana. It's the most neutral and peaceful. On the other hand, although I can't see clearly the person being suppressed in the restriction, there's a hot and poisonous air. Look at the color, it's red and dry. Look at the air, it's mixed and smelly. It faintly gives me a feeling of 1,000 miles of red land and gloomy and dead air. Although he's trying his best to hide it, the corpse stench on him that's similar to the flying yiksha still can't escape the divine light's detection." After noticing so many traces, Chin-Ong only needed to use his primordial spirit to calculate 70 to 80% of his origin. He immediately sneered in his heart, but didn't show anything on his face. He followed Tanyun into the eye of the sea and followed the source of the cold currents in the countless water channels. Chin-Ong casually shook open the one heaven water banner, and a stream of light wrapped around the two of them, avoiding the 3 stars beauty chi that was reproducing in the eye of the sea. They gradually entered the depths of the eye of the sea, and under Tanyun's lead, the traveling light drilled into the earth's crust and stopped in front of a glacier. Tanyun bowed towards the glacier and formed a spell with her left hand to silently pray. She saw that Chin-Ong was standing still at the side and thought that it was the bad temper of a disciple of the mystic door. She couldn't help but be delighted. This person doesn't even have the Tao fruit of an itinerant immortal, but he's arrogant and behaves like a disciple of a famous sect. I'm praying to Senior here, but he's not willing to lower his head. How can he please Senior like this? Even if his talent is better than mine, with this kind of personality, he will definitely make Senior unhappy. How could he pass the robe to him? He became even more sincere as he made up his mind. Chin-Ong could guess what she was thinking just by looking at the flash of joy in her eyes. He watched coldly and watched to see what tricks the person in the ice would play. Although the person in the ice could be said to be a monstrous devil in this world, Chin-Ong already had the appearance of a golden immortal before he was born. In the future, he would be a figure who could split the world apart. Even his greatest enemy was a figure who suppressed the multiverse and experimented with countless civilizations. A mere mortal devil was not worthy of his attention. When Chin-Ong saw the 1,000-year profound Een frost essence that formed the glacier, he was able to deduce many things. So even this group of 3 star beauties were not born in the eye of the sea. I'm afraid they were reared by someone to guard and strengthen this person's restrictions. I've already seen through this person's background. His innate nature is of the fire attribute. and his fate energy is great and different. There's also a hint of corpse energy hidden in his aura. I'm afraid he's either Huaho or Hanba. As a Hanba, he was suppressed in the eye of the sea and even connected to the restriction of the earth vein cold spring. He also reared a group of 3 star beauties day and night. The essence of Mother Xianfeng in his inner core was spat on the glacier to strengthen the restriction. Such means are not inferior to the long-brow spiritual master. This Hanba has been suppressed here for more than 1,000 years, but his spirit and body have not been completely destroyed. He died with a breath of resentment. When he was alive, his power should have been close to that of a heaven immortal. Although his essence has been damaged, and his vitality has been greatly damaged, I'm afraid he has already comprehended many principles of yin and yang. After coming out of the restriction, he has the potential to break through the heavenly devil realm and reincarnate into the great Asura Supreme heavenly devil body. Previously, when Tiger Head Zen Master came here to steal the essence of Mother Xianfeng's inner core, I'm afraid it was also deliberately misled by someone. When the young man from Tianqian Mountain hit him with the innate thunder, he was probably entrusted by someone to guard the restriction here. As for the person who came here to slaughter the beauty, the person in the restriction taught Tanyan the method of using Mother Xianfeng to refine magic power. It should all be to break one of the meridians of this restriction. Now, it seems that they actually succeeded. The person that Tanyan mentioned before is actually colluding with the person in the restriction, wanting to break out of the restriction and come into the world. There is no door to fortune or disaster. Only people can bring it on themselves. The South Sea Eye was connected to the fate energy of the 4 seas, and Chinong used the 9 Bends Yellow River Formation to suppress the fate energy. The previous 2 times he opened the sea, he borrowed people to block the tribulation and transferred the karma. Now, according to Chin Ang's calculations, this tribulation might not be able to be delayed any longer. When Chen Ong starts to open the abode, the 4 seas will open the tribulation at the same time. It was also under the guidance of fate energy that there was the sea eye to seal the demon. The person in the glacier would never have thought that Chen Ong had calculated so much in such a short period of time. Only when Tan Yun prayed for 3/4 of an hour did a shadow slowly appear on the glacier. As expected, he wore a high hat and black robe, different from the common people. If it wasn't for Chen Ang's Dharma eye that saw through the rigidity of his physical body under his skin and the circulation of baleful aura, he would have been easily fooled by him. This person was probably an impressive cultivator when he was alive, and after turning into a drought demon, he was even more powerful. If he could get rid of this corpse aura and come back to life, he would be the great Asura's undying heavenly demon body and become one of the most terrifying old demons in the universe. His shadow did not move, but a clear shout came from the ice wall. The overseas itinerant cultivator Guhauzi is frozen here because of the tribulation. Fellow Taoist, please help me break my corpse. If you can melt this piece of ice, I can pass down all the Tao skills I left behind. Before Chinong could reply, he felt a nameless curse power mixed in his voice. If he answered, he would definitely take advantage of this to absorb a bit of his aura, and he would be impeached. He thought, this person is really cautious. Not only does he know how to deceive others with lies, he also knows how to guard against it. It's just that he has eyes but cannot see. Seeing that I'm not an itinerant immortal, he looked down on me. He thought that I'm an itinerant cultivator trying to fool him. His words are very explicit, and his methods are not clever. He made a virtual aura and sent it out along with his answer. Is what you said true? He saw that Guhauzi looked down on him, so he also put on a lawless, arrogant, and willful look, completely imitating the look of a spoiled disciple of the righteous path. He did not need to figure out a lot of acting skills. As long as he imitated 80% of Wang Ming's look, there would be a lot of similarities. He imitated Wang Ming's look back then. He raised his chin and said disdainfully, "You're just an overseas itinerant immortal. What's so special about your Tao skills and treasured weapons that are worth my attention?" Don't talk about this. I'll just help you out a bit on account of our friendship." There was nothing wrong with what he said, but his tone was too domineering, causing the female cultivator Tan Yun to turn pale with fright. She thought he wasn't like this just now. Could it be that he was just suppressing himself, and now he's showing his true nature? He obviously wanted to help, but why did he make it look like we're enemies? But then she relaxed a little. After all, he's a disciple of a famous sect. It's natural that he wouldn't fight with me for the Tao book inheritance. I've underestimated him. I didn't expect that he would look down on the things that I value as much as my life. Chapter 483. Chen Ong only sneered in his heart. I do know of one yang treasure. It is condensed from the 10,000-year-old yang essence of Misty Mountain. But that 10,000-year-old warm jade was left by Changmei to his lover in his previous life, the reincarnated body of the 9 heavens demoness Qin Azichin, Li Yingqiong. Moreover, Li Yingqiong is my disciple's disciple. She is decisive in killing, which suits my temperament. How can I let you cheat such a good thing? He only smiled faintly on the surface and flicked his finger to release the samadhi fire of refining devil, and said loudly, "Yang treasure can nourish the body and strengthen the Tao foundation. How can it be easy to obtain? But I do have a treasure of the essence of fire. I wonder if it is suitable?" He rotated the samadhi fire in his hand, sprinkling many sparks. It was so beautiful that Tan Yin was dazzled by it. The samadhi fire of refining devil could melt the ice that sealed Hanba's heavenly corpse. There was no joke more ridiculous than this in the world. If this fire burned, would it melt the ice? Or would it refine the devil? If Hanba was not afraid that the true samadhi fire would melt his body and damage his essence, of course he could give it a try. In this world, other than the purple-green Tusita fire that Li Yingqiong obtained in the future, there was nothing else that could restrain Hanba better than this true samadhi fire. If it was not for the fact that Chun Ang's true samadhi fire was not mature enough, with Hanba's current weakness, it was not impossible to burn him to death. Even so, this unrefined, true samadhi fire had the possibility of destroying Hanba's Tao foundation. Gu Haozi did not dare to let him try. He quickly said, "This fire is powerful, but its power is not mature yet. Even if it breaks through the 10,000-year-old Hanba's prohibition, it will not be able to protect my body in time. Please try another fire attribute treasure. It would be better if it is neutral and mild. Fortunately, I am not in a hurry. Please pay more attention, my 2 young friends." This time he already had a 50 to 60% chance of breaking out of the seal. If it was in the past, it would have been more urgent to win over Chinong. But now, there were 3 or 4 waves of people who wanted to let him out. Chinong and the others were the spare tires, so why would he take the risk? The 2 of them each had their own ulterior motives, and they tacitly changed the topic. Tan Yin took the opportunity to mention Chanang's previous guess that the invader might have practiced the Blood God Sutra. Gu Haozi pondered for a moment before saying, "Ever since Deng Yin and his disciples were imprisoned, and the Blood God ancestor has not appeared for a long time, the Blood God Sutra has not been circulated in the world. Could it be that Deng Yin has unsealed himself? Or did the Blood God ancestor have other inheritances? Listening to your description, this really seems to be the most powerful magic in the Blood God Sutra. This blood shadow divine technique is extremely vicious. This old Taoist will have to ask the 2 of you to investigate it." He continued, "If it's really the magic of the Blood God Sutra, this matter will be extremely dangerous. The 2 of you must not act rashly. My slough is sealed in ice, and I can't send out many treasures. I only have one escape technique that I can teach the 2 of you. This escape technique is a simplified version of the fastest spiritual light escape technique of the mystic door. It's called the Ice Soul Divine Light Escape. With this to protect yourself, you can escape from the hands of the demonic disciple even in a dangerous situation." After saying that, he really transmitted a spell formula into the ears of Chenong and Tan Yin. Chen Ong quietly activated his primordial spirit and saw that this spell formula was basically the same. However, a few key points seemed to be compatible with his impeachment curse Dharma access, and there were some hidden traps. At the side, Tenyun was overjoyed. She never thought that she would be able to obtain such a true inheritance. She was even more loyal to Gu Haozi, and she was only short of raising her hand to swear to find out the whereabouts of the demonic person. On the other hand, Chen Ong thought more. With Gu Haozi's actions, he must have slept in the same bed as the person who saved him. He might not even know the true origins of the person, so he was more guarded than others, and Chen Ong could be considered as one of the chess pieces he prepared. If Gu Haozi could take this opportunity to spy on that person's background, he would be prepared if he were to fall out with him in the future. Chen Eng's plan was even deeper. He was feigning civility with this old monster. 80% of it was because he had taken a fancy to the demonic body that the old monster had cultivated for many years. This was also an extremely daring plan. Ordinary people were afraid of this old monster and could not wait to escape. For someone like Chunong who wanted to refine the old monster into his own refined corpse, it was not enough to describe him as a person with great skill and courage. This drought demon was experienced, and its nature was excellent. If Chen Ong really refined it into his own demonic god, a demonic god of the level of the great Azura supreme demonic body, it could be said to be the most powerful demonic treasure in this world. Even if an ordinary person obtained it, he could go to West Kunlun and call himself a demon ancestor. With such a good material, there were 3 levels of utilization. The lowest level was, of course, to destroy the Hitarigime's self-consciousness and refine it as an excellent zombie. Although the Hitarigime obtained was considered powerful, it had already lost the possibility of transforming into the great Azura supreme demon body. It was really a reckless waste of such a good material. The middle level was naturally to restrain Gu Haozi's consciousness and use the most profound method of refining demonic gods to refine him. It would make him beg for death, but he could not. In one move, he would become one of the most powerful demonic gods of the formless demonic path. The disadvantage was that the drought demon's consciousness would resist, and it would delay the time of transformation. It would take a long time to refine, and it would also damage one's potential. The highest level was what Chenong was plotting now. He wanted to let Gu Haozi become Chen Eng's refined corpse unknowingly. Even his consciousness would be refined into something like a talisman or spiritual consciousness. He would turn from a living being in the world into an existence, like an object. Because it involved the Tao of creation and the transformation of the body, not only would it not damage one's potential, it would also have another magical effect in Chen Eng's hands. Both of them had ulterior motives. Other than Tanyun, who was unaware, they were actually competing to see who was more scheming. Currently, Chenong was far ahead of them. He had even vaguely grasped a trace of the main deity. Although there was no evidence yet, according to Chen Eng's primordial spirit, there was indeed something strange about it, and it was definitely related to the main deity. Gu Haozi guided Tanyun to inhale and exhale the 10,000-year-old cold essence from the glacier and refined it into traces of icy divine light. Chen Eng's Xianming real water could freeze the heaven and earth. It was far superior to the icy divine light. Although he knew that Gu Haozi had the intention to wear down the prohibition on him, Chenong still used a limited amount of the cold spring's essence. He even secretly collected the remaining 3 stars beauty and placed them into the yellow river of 9 Bends formation. In order to gain the upper hand, Chenong silently merged the yellow river of 9 Bends formation with the Eye of the Sea. Although the formation was not activated, Chenong could activate the formation with a single thought, trapping everything in the Eye of the Sea into the formation. If Gu Haozi wanted to break through the prohibition while Chenong was not around, he would find out that there was a more terrifying formation outside the prohibition. Although Gu Haozi could sense the slight changes in the Eye of the Sea, he was a zombie after all. He did not have a primordial spirit and was not as sensitive to the mysteries of heaven as a cultivator. An anomaly like Chunong could even scheme against a cultivator, let alone him. Chapter 484. Chan Daoyu, that enemy's whereabouts are unpredictable. We don't have any clues. The 4 seas are vast. How can we find him? Moreover, the Blood God Sutra can be released and released freely. We might not be able to recognize him even if we meet. Sister-in-law wants to see you. The most talkative girl, Yin Qing. Can you come to my temporary abode for a discussion so that I can complete Senior's request? Tan Yin stared at Chinong with her beautiful eyes. She knew that the mana of this mystic door elite was 10 times stronger than her. If she really wanted to save Gu Haozi, she would have to rely on Chen Ang's strength. There were a few obstacles that were the most difficult: to refine Gu Haozi into a refined corpse. Chinong also needed to make some preparations. Now that he had that person's reputation, if he sneaked into the Eye of the Sea, he would be sent to Chinong, so he was not in a hurry. He smiled at Tan Yin and said, "There's no hurry. Let me first set up the prohibition to prevent that person from sneaking in." As soon as he finished, he threw the one sky water banner in his hand and turned into a stream of light that went into the Eye of the Sea. In an instant, a thick fog suddenly appeared on the sea. It was as dense as clouds, and the chi of water essence was rich. Chen Ong pretended to make gestures and chanted incantations, but he actually absorbed the 9 Mother Wind chi essences that he collected previously and sent them into the prohibition one by one. Suddenly, a strong wind blew on the sea. The 9 Mother Wind chi essences were bound by the prohibition and gradually passed through the Eye of the Sea, forming a huge waterspout that sucked in the sea surface. Countless Gue water essences were condensed into thunderballs by Chunong and thrown into the waterspout. Gradually, the wind and water calmed down, and the sea surface calmed down. However, Tan Yun knew that if someone touched the prohibition, many of the tricks that she had accumulated previously would burst out at the same time. Even if it could not hurt that enemy, it was enough to warn them. Chin Ong stopped and smiled. "I've set up a shapeless fog in this Eye of the Sea. Ordinary sea beasts and ships passing by won't disturb. If a cultivator enters the Eye of the Sea, he will see the 3-star beauty transformed by my talisman. If his magic power is activated, it will cause the Mother Wind Essence Chi and the 10th Water True Thunder to attack at the same time, which is enough to stop him from coming to us." Tan Yun nodded and agreed with Chen Ang's meticulousness. After the arrangements were made, the 2 of them flew towards a nearby deserted island under Tan Yun's guidance. Chin Ong noticed that Tan Yun's flying sword light was dim. Obviously, the quality was not good. Not only was the flying speed of the sword light slow, but its spirituality was also lacking. Tan Yun, on the other hand, didn't think much of her own sword ray. She had seen flying swords like this when she traveled overseas. She only saw the pure water-colored sword ray around Chun Ang's body, and she was very envious. She thought to herself, "Chun Daoyu's sword ray is the most pure color and has the most spirituality that I have ever seen in my life." That banner-like magic treasure of his earlier spread out to cover dozens of kilometers, and it's extremely fast in the water. It's clear that it's extraordinary. Not to mention that golden ship magic treasure. I heard that ships, palaces, buildings, and pagodas are the rarest magic treasures, and the materials used are more abundant than the other small items. Moreover, their bodies are huge, and it's harder to cultivate spirituality. For Chen Daoyu to have such a magic treasure, it's obvious that he's very rich. Immediately, she felt ashamed in her heart. I'm just a short-sighted person. I thought that Chen Daoyu would covet my opportunity and compete with me for Senior Gu Haozi's treasure. With his wealth, how could he be interested in such trivial things? In order to pass the fire tribulation, Senior Gu Haozi must have destroyed some of his precious magic treasures. Only a rogue cultivator of the unorthodox school like me would treat it as a treasure. Thinking of this, Tan Yun couldn't help but blush. She saw that the deserted island where her cave abode was located was already in sight. She quickly pressed down the sword ray, lowered her head, and went into the cave abode. The deserted island was only dozens of kilometers wide. It was tall in the east and short in the west, and at the top was a cliff that faced the sea. The female cultivator, Tan Yun's cave abode, was in the middle of the cliff. Through the mountain, the front cave opened to the inside of the island, and the back cave could directly see the sea. Inside there were tables, chairs, and beds carved from stone. The furniture was all covered with large pieces of fur cushions. There was a crystal lamp in the middle of the cave abode that emitted a bright light that illuminated the entire cave abode. When Chun Ong stepped into the cave abode, he stepped on a piece of soft cotton. It was the best white bear skin of the North Sea. In Chun Ang's eyes, Tan Yun's manna was only third-rate, but her usage was already comparable to that of a noble. Compared to the many luxuries of the future, it was just a little less novel, but more exquisite. In fact, any cultivator didn't need to worry about money. There were many uncivilized places in the world that only cultivators could go to, and the resources there were much more abundant than in the mortal world. Many of the unorthodox sects overseas, because they didn't know the principle of frugality of heaven and earth, and didn't ask for the number of tribulations, sometimes had more abundant resources than the orthodox mystic door. The two of them sat in the cave abode, and Tan Yun brought tea over. She personally poured it for Chinong before saying, "Chin Daoyu, the Yang Harmony treasure, and the essence of the true fire that Senior Gu Hao needs to unravel his corpse. I've been searching for it for 10 years, and I've only heard of the scarlet crowball that Long Brow spiritual master made 1,000 years ago, the golden crow divine fire from ancient times, and the inner core of Senior Golden Beard slave from the Purple Cloud Palace in the South Sea. As for the Yang Harmony treasure, I've never heard of it. Not to mention that these 3 treasures are in the hands of the senior individual immortals. There's also a big sect like Amei. How are we going to ask for it? Just the Yang Harmony treasure alone is a huge chasm." Hearing this, Chen Ong pretended to frown and said, "The reason why Gu Hao wants this Yang Harmony treasure, I've also guessed a little about the inside story. It's nothing more than his corporeal body dying, and his primordial spirit being invaded by the cold air. He needs a gentle and moderate yang qi to nourish his primordial spirit and warm his corporeal body. If this problem can be solved, he doesn't necessarily need this kind of treasure." The female cultivator, Tan Yun, was even more confused. The Yang Harmony treasure was already a mirage, and a treasure that could solve the problem of Gu Hao's primordial spirit and corporeal body was even more unheard of. She didn't know why Chenong mentioned it. She only heard Chenong continue saying, "The primordial spirit is invaded by the cold air. If there's a Yang Harmony treasure to warm it up, that would naturally be the best. But if there's no such thing, there's no harm in giving in a little. I have a spell called the Tai Yin form refining technique, which is the Maoshan Shangqing sect's true legacy spell. It can be used to attach the primordial spirit to the moon and refine one's corporeal body into the Tai Yin godly form. It has other advantages. Fellow Taoist Gu Hao's primordial spirit is invading the cold air and refining it with the Tai Yin form. Not only is it harmless, but it's also beneficial. In this way, he'll achieve the Tai Yin body, and he'll no longer be affected by the cold air. He'll be able to walk and reincarnate like a normal person, but it'll be harder for him to ascend. But since he's plotting to reincarnate, it won't be a hindrance." Tan Yun was confused. She only knew that what Chenong said was impressive, but she didn't understand the inside story. If Gu Hao was here, he would have already understood what Chenong meant. The so-called Tai Yin body was nothing more than a different kind of refined corpse. The Tai Yin form refining technique had been passed down for a long time. Early in the ancient times, there were witchcraft that refined one's body into a dead object in order to seek longevity. The so-called Blood Clan in the extreme west and the Flying Iksha in the east were all like this. The Tai Yin form refining technique was the best of this path. It even refined death into life and refined the primordial spirit to attach to the shell. It was the method of the ancient Qi cultivator's primordial spirit to reside in the world, and the corpse's body was refined into the Tai-yin body that nourished the primordial spirit. Chapter 485. However, these seniors who cultivated the Tao were not like the wild drought demons. They were slow-witted and did not have much knowledge. Each of them had accumulated years of experience and were extremely intelligent. If it wasn't for Gu Haozi turning into a drought demon and using a mouthful of corpse qi to blind his primordial spirit and heavenly secrets, Chenong really did not have the confidence to scheme against him. Fortunately, his primordial spirit was sealed now. It was good enough that he was left with 40% of his original intelligence. However, if he were to use the body of a drought demon to revive and transform into the great Azura supreme demon body, his primordial spirit would merge into the undying demon body. With just a subtle demonic thought, he would be able to give birth to countless cunning, intelligent, vicious, and stubborn thoughts. Scheming against him would be as difficult as ascending to heaven. Great Azura demon path and Mahesvara demon path were orthodoxies that were entangled with Buddha. Many bodhisattvas and sons of Buddha had suffered losses in their hands. How could they be so easy to deal with? When the demon path cultivated to this level, although their hearts were still stubborn, their wisdom and willpower were not inferior to the arhats and bodhisattvas of Buddhism. They were even more cunning. It was also at this time that Chenong was coincidentally able to encounter a drought demon zombie that was about to transform into a great Azura, but had stopped at that step. This gave him the possibility to refine a great Azura supreme, fiend god that had never been seen before in this world. Based on this, Chenong could be called a great master of the demonic path that shocked the ancients and dazzled the contemporaries. If Chenong wanted to take Gu Haozi in, he still had to make many other preparations, so he said to Tanyin, "Although we are only guessing the technique that person cultivated, it is definitely not the demon path's method of stealing blood essence and blood sacrifice. Since he discovered Gu Haozi's primordial spirit, which is very beneficial to him, he will definitely not give up. To prevent any accidents from happening, he will probably come back frequently to probe. Although I am not afraid of him, I still have to be careful of such an evil technique. This demon refining samadhi fire is a rare true fire that can restrain many demon path techniques in this world. I relied on this fire to have the possibility of refining that person to death. However, this true fire is not mature yet. It still needs a lot of hard work. I want to find a place to practice. Do you know if there are any high mountains nearby that I can collect the sun's true fire?" Tanyin didn't have time to think and said, 50,000 miles from here is Hainan Island's 5 Finger Mountains. Among them, Motherly Peak is 100,000 feet tall and can be considered one of them. The second is the blessed land of Luojia Mountain in the Southern Sea, which is the most beautiful. The third is the nearby Black Sand Seas, Shao Mountain. Even though it's only 50,000 feet tall, it's the closest and can be returned in a day. When Chenong heard this, he smiled and said, "The rest is too far away. Harvesting the sun true fire is not a big deal. If the matter of the sea eye is delayed, it will be my fault. It's better to choose a place that's closer. I'll have to trouble fellow Taoist to point the way to the Black Sand Seas, Wu Mountain." Tanyin conjured a sea map and pointed it at him. She saw that Chenong was not as arrogant as before and instead showed a bearing. So she mustered up her courage and said to him, "Qin Daoyu is knowledgeable and has vast knowledge. Are you willing to tell me about the Ice Soul Divine Light escape technique that Senior Gu Haozi taught me?" Tanyin is ignorant and actually can't understand it. Chenong pondered for a moment and agreed. This is not difficult. Also, your natal mana is very heterogeneous. Even though you have the jellyfish's essence to refine it, your foundation is still wrong. There are actually more than 40 true talismans of mana, and many of them overlap and interfere with each other. They are huge and bloated and hard to operate. They are messy and can't be used. You can take the opportunity to refine them and lay a foundation. When Tanyin heard this, she was overjoyed and said, "Is that true?" She blurted out her excited words before she thought it through. Then, She felt that her choice of words was inappropriate, so she quickly tried to remedy it. I didn't mean to question you. I was just too happy for a moment and became silly. Chin Daoyu, I heard people say that the Tao Foundation has no regrets. When I entered the Tao, I only had a scroll of unorthodox techniques, so collecting qi to enter the Tao was a little heterogeneous. After that, I coveted a lot of convenience and randomly practiced some spells. I even mixed up the true talismans, so there are dozens of true talismans of mana, and they are not systematic. After that, I suffered a lot of bad consequences and was filled with regret. If you have a way to help me rebuild the Tao Foundation, I will be grateful to you. Tan Yun will never forget it. Chen Ong waved his hand and released a wisp of icy soul divine light from his fingertip. The clear and bright divine light was like an ice centipede, flying up and down around Chin Eng's finger. Then, with another wave of his hand, 15 true talismans flew out from the divine light and hovered above his hand, bobbing up and down. Tan Yin looked at these 15 true talismans in a daze. Her expression was joyful, and she quickly concentrated and memorized them. Then she heard Chenong say, "When cultivators visualize talismans and cultivate their qi into talismans, there will be corresponding supernatural powers." Later on, there were people who refined the talismans into seeds and merged with the primordial spirit, so it can be said to be the true life talisman. Raising one's hand or foot, there will be talismans corresponding to it, so there is no need to concentrate and think. It's just a talisman and it has a single effect. Therefore, the ancient cultivators of qi only had 1 or 2 extraordinary abilities, such as riding the wind, burning themselves, prolonging their lives, or turning invisible. Later on, there were almighty people who combined several talismans, and with just a few basic talismans, they could form endless spells, which is the so-called mana. And the Tao Foundation has no regrets. It refers to when a cultivator becomes an itinerant immortal. The mana of one's life enters the primordial spirit from the flesh body, and the foundation is planted on the primordial spirit. Other than reincarnation, there is no other way to change it. Chun Ong smiled indifferently and said, "Therefore, there is still time to change the mana of fellow Taoist. It's just that in the future, you will have to put in 10 times more effort to erase the traces of the original foundation." When Tan Yun heard this, she did not have the time to think about other things. She nodded eagerly and said, "There are gains and losses from the previous fate, so it's only natural. Tan Yun does not dare to plot anything else. I only ask fellow Taoists to help me rebuild my foundation, and that would be a great favor." Chen Ong nodded and said, "The Ice Spirit Divine Light Escape Technique passed down by Senior Guozi is considered a superior mana of the unorthodox school, but it's a pity that it only has 1 spell and lacks the basic mental cultivation method. There should be 24 natal talismans, but there are only 15 in the Escape Light spell. Among them, there are 12 Divine Light talismans. 1 is missing, and there are only 4 Ice Spirit talismans. If it is used as the foundation, there will no longer be the mana of the Ice Spirit Divine Light spell that can freeze all things. It will only be left with clear ice and a part of the pure foundation. Although there will be help in the cultivation of ice and water spells, it will not be as powerful as the original and will be reduced to the middle stage." Tan Yun said frankly, "How is it compared to me before?" Chun Ong smiled and said in understanding, "Of course it's better than countless. Fellow Taoists' previous foundation was mixed, and it was considered the lowest of the unorthodox schools. After changing to cultivate the Ice Spirit Divine Light, you have the potential to become an itinerant immortal." Tan Yun nodded and said excitedly, "Then how would I dare to hope for anything else? I would also like to ask fellow Taoist, if you obtain the Ice Spirit Divine Light's foundation mantra in the future, can you still change your cultivation?" Chen Ong thought for a moment, then raised his head and answered, "It's fine before becoming an itinerant immortal, but after becoming an itinerant immortal, there will be opportunities." Tan Yin thanked him profusely, and her gratitude towards Chunong went straight into her heart. She was itinerant cultivator, and she knew the fickleness of human nature the best. With such a benefit, she could steel her heart and ignore everything else and follow a straightforward and resolute path. Now, even if Chinong asked her to give up Gu Haozi's orthodoxy and transfer it to him, she would probably be willing. In the next 3 days, Tan Yin broke her previous foundation under Chin Ang's guidance. Relying on the cold power in the cold spring of the sea eye, she refined the jellyfish essence that she had absorbed before and transformed it into a beam of ice spirit divine light mana and rebuilt her foundation. Although she lost 80% of her mana, after this stage, her cultivation went smoothly and she improved by leaps and bounds. With the ice spirit divine light's escape technique, she was fast and did not have to worry about being caught. Chapter 486. The Black Sand Sea was a dangerous place. The sea was filled with sharp reefs, and the sea was dark and gloomy. Under the sea, the terrain was rugged. There were cliffs and mountain ranges everywhere. The main peak was 5,000 feet above the sea and was called Shao Mountain by the sea merchants. There were also vicious sharks and fierce dragons. There were many man-eating sea beasts. It was really a forbidden place for the merchants of the 4 seas. There were many such dangerous places in the world. Mortals lived in secluded corners. Even if there were merchants who traveled all over the world, they could only find a slightly safer route. Even this kind of business was a job with a slim chance of survival. As a result, the Ming Dynasty's territory was only 1,000th of the size of China. It was the most prosperous country in the 4 seas, and it was called Middle Earth. There were billions of places in the world of Shu Mountain, but only 100,000th of it was explored by mortals. The rest were places where cultivators came and went. That was why the cultivators were the main characters in this world. In such a treacherous place, it only took Chinong 3 minutes to land his sword light on the top of the mountain. The main peak was as dangerous as the edge of a blade. It was completely bare rock, and there was no vegetation at all. The sea breeze was cut by the 2 knife-like sides of the mountain, making a strange sound. Chen Ong stood on the top of the mountain and saw that the mountain breeze was so strong that even the accumulated snow could not accumulate. He waved his hand and released a ray of tying magnetism divine, thunder to open up a piece of flat land. He then waved his hand and took out a bronze mirror from his sleeve. He placed a prohibition on it and fixed it in the middle of the mountain. The fierce mountain breeze went around this place. He then called out Lingsha from the Yellow River of 9 Bends Formation and said to her, "I want to refine the true Samadhi fire and set up a formation to collect the true fire of the sun. Because I have something else to do, I sent you to guard this place. Although the Tai meteoric mirror is only a prototype, it can store the true fire of the sun on its own. You just have to practice it every noon. If you do this well, I will bestow this mirror to you when you return." As soon as he finished speaking, he transmitted the incantation into her heart and searched for another direction to escape. Sacrificing and refining the true Samadhi fire was only a small matter. The most important thing was to prepare the items for Gu Haozi to cultivate the lunar form refining technique. One of the lunar divine pearls was the key to Chinang's plan, so he still had to find and refine it. The Tai-yin form refining technique was a technique to support the moon and refine one's physical body and primordial spirit. A Tai-yin star was the key, but Gu Haozi was sealed in the sea and could not see the moonlight. How could he cultivate like this? Moreover, when this technique was being practiced, the great yin star would react, the full moon illuminating tens of thousands of li, not missing for several months. The disturbance extremely great. There would be endless external tribulations coming to disturb him. Gu Haozi was sealed by someone, so how could he dare act like this? The only way was to refine a divine moon pearl and pretend to be a bright moon. Then he would place his primordial spirit on it and refine his corporeal body. Finally, his primordial spirit would return to his corporeal body. Then he would borrow the divine moon pearl to refine his primordial spirit and achieve the true form of the Great Een. There was no doubt about it. If Chenong did not activate the restriction, there was a possibility that he could succeed. Otherwise, he could not even think of deceiving a 1,000-year cultivator like Gu Haozi. However, Chenong only wanted him to complete the first step, which was to refine his corporeal body into the true form of the Great Een. When it was completed, he would activate the restriction in the divine moon pearl and cause Gu Haozi to be possessed by the devil while refining his primordial spirit. Then he would refine himself into Chin Ang's divine demon of Een. Then he would borrow a bit of the true form of the Great Een and use the true fire of the sun to burn it for 49 days. He would shed the nature of Hanba and cultivate the great Asura's supreme, heavenly demon body, other than Chenong, who was a reincarnated monster from a different world. No one else had such attainments. In order for Hanba to shed his demonic body, he had to cause a drought in the mortal world for 3 years and cause the death of countless living beings. Only then would he have the chance to transform if he was not slain by the cultivators of the right path. Chun Ong had calculated Gu Haozi's background. He was a rogue celestial who achieved Tao during the Qin dynasty. He died from a calamity in the Eastern Han dynasty. His resentment was not extinguished, and he turned into Hanba. He appeared during the Western Jin dynasty and caused a drought in the mortal world for 3 years, causing the death of countless living beings. At that time, he actually cultivated into a half-demon body. He was the most powerful demon at that time. Later on, he was suppressed by a mighty person and was used to fill up the eye of the sea. For someone like him to appear and cause harm to the mortal world for 3 years, a Hanba that matched the heavens had not been seen in the Central Plains for hundreds of years. It was really rare that he was not eliminated by the cultivators. If it was not because of the chaos of the 5 barbarians that caused a great disaster in the mortal world, he would not have been able to achieve this by chance. There was only one Hanba with such potential since ancient times. It would be difficult for him to appear again in the future. He could be considered as the only one. Chunong was doing research and experiments. He loved this kind of precious specimen the most. Therefore, Chunong would not allow it to fail. If he could take this opportunity to plot against the person who was suspected to have clues about the main deity, it would be even better. The embryo of the divine Pearl of Een was most suitable to be an inner core of a demon that swallowed and spat out the moon. It was best to use the pearl of the flood dragon, the pearl of the centipede, the pearl of the flowing jade of the moonlight, and the giant clam at the bottom of the sea to refine a mother pearl of the dark embryo. Then it would be refined with the true water of Een to remove the essence of the pearl, leaving only a little essence of Tayin. Only then would it be considered as successfully cultivated. Chun Ong swallowed and spat out the essence of the moon at night. He crossed the night sky with the Milky Way and refined the true water of Een. During the day, he searched the 4 seas and made divinations to find a suitable pearl fetus. After a few months, he finally converted a 1,000-year-old mussel into reincarnation and gave it a lot of benefits. In accordance with heaven's will, he kept a 1,000-year-old Xian bead in his pocket without taking any karma. Then he returned to the top of the black sand sea dragon. He refined the fire during the day and the pearl at night with his disciple. After 36 days, he finally refined a pearl and cultivated the true Samadhi fire to a small success. On this day, Chenong was refining the manna of the Milky Way. He used the essence of the sun and moon to merge with the water vapor of the ocean. Suddenly, he sensed something and knew that the prohibition he set in the eye of the South Sea was touched. He kept the silk and the treasured weapons and steered the golden ship towards the eye of the sea. Above the sea's eye, 9 huge tornadoes trapped a person in the center. Infinite Gue water, true thunder was triggered, covering the sky and covering the earth, causing the person to suffer unspeakable pain. He could only hide behind a 5-colored miasma. Looking at the miasma trembling, the treasured light of the magic treasure faintly dissipating, it was obvious that he could not hold on any longer. However, The waves on the surface of the sea rolled, and endless water vapor rolled over. The true thunder of Een water was born and extinguished. A divine thunder exploded, and countless seawater soared into the sky. It was then condensed into more true thunder of Een water by the giant water tornadoes. How could the power of one person compare with the power of heaven and earth? The person's mana could not be replenished, and soon fell into a hopeless situation. When he saw Chun Ang's traveling light, he quickly shouted at him, "Fellow Taoist, please wait! Fellow Taoist, please wait! I accidentally triggered the restriction here. Fellow Taoist, please lend me a hand and help me escape from the restriction." Chun Ang shouted in midair, "I'm the one who set up this restrictive spell, to trap a fiend who is slaughtering living beings and extracting the blood essence of the 3-star beauty swan and I to cultivate an evil technique. This place is remote. If no one attacks the 3-star beauty transformed by my treasured weapon, the prohibition will not be activated. Hurry up and explain. Otherwise, when I combine the mother wind with the true thunder of Een water, the power of wind and thunder will be 10 times more terrifying. By then, you will only be left with a strand of soul to reincarnate. Don't blame me for not giving you a chance." Chapter 487. Although you are wearing a kind-looking shell, do you think I can't recognize the bloody light floating under your skin? It was just a random guess, but I didn't expect to guess your background. It is indeed the evil method of the Blood God Sutra. Besides, the original Blood God Sutra only has the method of robbing blood essence and soul. It will never rob the consciousness and mana of a cultivator. Chun Ang felt that he might have found the traces of the interference of the main god. The bloody light that appeared on this person was like the son of Blood God. Obviously, the original owner of this skin had been swallowed by him, and even his consciousness had been robbed. His mana and memory were the same as before. Even if the person was close to him, they wouldn't be able to see it. Chun Ang also saw that his physical body was floating and vaguely formed by the bloody light. It was different from the normal form, so he realized the truth. This person's physical body was closer to the state of the infant of the mystic door, but there was an extra evil chi in his bones and trace of bloody light floating in his primordial spirit. This was the original body of the son of Blood God. Thinking of this, Chun Ang waved his right hand, and the mist on the sea turned into the one sky water banner and returned to his hand. He then shook the long water-colored banner in his hand, and endless water, threads fell down. With just one strike, the number of Gue water divine thunders in the mother wind's chi essence was increased by 10 times. They exploded together, and the sound of thunder rumbled, tearing the miasma that protected the person into pieces. Seeing how fierce Chun Ang was, the person was scared out of his wits. He could only release a clear glass mirror, and a ball of mirror light the size of an acre protected his body. He kept begging to Chun Ang, looking very pitiful. Chun Ang just sneered and waved the banner again, wanting to kill him here and now. Tan Yun shouted from behind, "Fellow Taoist, please have mercy. I'm afraid there must be some misunderstanding." Chun Ang paused for a moment, stopped the spell, and waited for her to come up. At first, Tan Yin was still 100 miles away, but in an instant, she landed on the cloud near Chun Ang. Her speed was 100 times faster than before. It was obvious that she had mastered the Ice Soul Divine Light escape. With an anxious look on her face, she came to the middle of the formation, disregarding her fight with Chun Ang. She first carefully looked at the appearance of the person trapped in the restrictive spell before hesitantly asking, "Is that Reverend Mo of Yellow Rock Island? I went to visit her a few days ago." Chun Ang already knew that the person below was a devil. The shell on his body had been used by the devil to harm others. That immortal Mo of Yellow Rock Island had probably been harmed by him long ago. However, this person had used the blood god's son to harm others, and the soul and memory of the victim were all there. If he imitated it, no one would be able to recognize him. Therefore, Chun Ang just let him pretend. Sure enough, When Reverend Mo saw the Gui water restrictive spell stop, he smiled bitterly and said, "Fairy Tan, please don't joke. The last time you and I met was 5 years ago. What do you mean by recently?" Tan Yin heaved a sigh of relief and said to Chinong, "Chin Daoyu, I know the person below. He's an individual cultivator from Yellow Rock Island, 500 miles away. His background is clear, and he's not a devil cultivator. Reverend Mo is skilled in earth and with spells and has lived on Yellow Rock Island for hundreds of years. Before I came here, I had dealings with him. He's not with the previous person, so please let him out." Chin Ong already knew what to do, but he pretended to think for a moment and shouted, "You said you're Reverend Mo of Yellow Rock Island? But I don't know how many individual cultivators can last for 3/4 of an hour under my Gui water true thunder restriction. Besides, that miasma cloud was from Miaojiang." He turned around and asked Tan Yin, "Does Reverend Mo have these 2 magic treasures?" He used his magic power to draw a bit of the broken cloud and pointed at the mirror in Reverend Mo's hand. Tan Yin frowned and observed for a moment before shaking her head and saying, "Reverend Mo's powerful magic treasures are the 6 earth and wood crystal sand. I've never heard of him having these 2 magic treasures." Having said that, she couldn't help but feel a trace of doubt and looked at Reverend Mo to hear his explanation. With a bitter face, Reverend Mo said, "The 5-cloud miasma is my trump card. I usually keep it a secret and only use it to protect myself when the great calamity comes." After saying that, he revealed an extremely vivid expression of heartache and looked at Chinong with an expression of being angry but not daring to say anything. He continued, "As for this submerged sea glazed mirror, it's a treasure I obtained a few days ago from an overseas individual cultivator. He left a message saying that his remains are here, so I came to look for him. I didn't expect to disturb fellow Taoists' restrictive spell." Reverend Mo's performance completely convinced Tan Yin. She persuaded in a low voice, "Now that Chin Daoyu has no more doubts, can you let Reverend Mo out?" Chinong didn't answer. He just flew forward for a distance, getting closer and closer to the edge of the restrictive spell. Reverend Mo stared at Chinong anxiously. Seeing that he didn't respond, he sighed and said, "Fine. I think you're still worried about me. How about this? I'll let you guard the magic treasures. Even if you let me out, I won't be able to fight back. Is that okay?" Only then did Chinong nod and say, "Fine, give me the magic treasures. I'll use this streamer to trap you first so that you won't launch an attack from afar." He waved the Tiani Life water streamer in his hand, turning it into a magical cloud and entering the restrictive spell. Old Taoist Mo sighed and looked extremely reluctant. He put his submerged sea glazed mirror, 6 grains of earthwood crystal sand, an unorthodox flying sword, and a blood-red amber-like object on the magical cloud, wrapped them up, and sent them to Chin-Ong. Chin-Ong glanced at them and sneered. Ordinary cultivators couldn't see them, but when he scanned them with his primordial spirit, he found that these objects all had a trace of blood-red light, especially that blood-red amber, which was obviously transformed from a son of blood god. If he didn't pay attention and found a flaw, the son of blood god would turn back to his original form, pounce on him, suck his blood essence, and take away his primordial spirit. As for the other magic treasures, as long as Chinong picked them up and used his magic power to probe them, the son of blood god's magic power would be lifeless and seep into Chen Ang's magic power, dissolving all of his magic power. At that time, his life and death would be in his hands, and refining him into a son of blood god would be a piece of cake. This kind of magic power was the most hidden. Even if ordinary cultivators noticed it, they would only suspect that it was caused by internal or external demons. They would never think that it was a demonic parasite like the son of blood god. However, Chen Ang's celestial river magic power was the foundation created by the sect master of the other realm. It was supplemented by Chen Ang's real body and verified by his incarnation in this life. It was already one of the best magic powers in the 3 realms. Whether it was the Tianyi true water that could contain all things, the Xianming true water that could freeze the ages, or the first essence heavy water that was integrated into one, they were all extremely pure power that could not tolerate impurities like the magic power of the Son of Blood God. Even if it was invaded by the Son of Blood God, this kind of magic power would be incompatible and would be purified by him slightly. Chapter 488. When Chen Ong picked up the two items, he felt two extremely tiny strands of strange magic power sneaking into his body. The two strands of magic power didn't look strange on the surface. They were like warm blood qi that wanted to melt into Chen Ang's flesh and blood. However, Chen Ang's spirit, qi and spirit were refined as one. Therefore, the two strands of strange magic power were very conspicuous and were easily caught by him. With Chen Ang's ability, he could naturally sense the deep hatred and stubbornness hidden in the blood qi. It was just a strand of magic power, but it gave Chen Ong a feeling of cunning and wisdom. It was even trying to pry into Chen Ang's consciousness. Immediately, he concluded that the magic power of the Blood God Son was not the original version passed down by the Blood God Elder. It was like the legendary 129,600 Blood God Sons in the Blood Sea. After swallowing a cultivator, they could create a Blood God Son with the same memory and supernatural power. The poison was endless and hidden deep. It could easily destroy a person's spirit and body. Chen Ong was worried that the person would find out something was wrong, so he used his magic power to imitate a greedy and stupid consciousness and transmitted it through the Blood God's magic power. Chen Ong glanced over and saw a trace of sneer flashing across Jinren Mo's eyes. He immediately understood what was going on. Suddenly, he absorbed a strand of the Blood God Son's qi and used his extremely high magic power to suddenly cast a curse to freeze the person's primordial spirit. The Tianyi water streamer in his hand covered down. How could Jinren Mo, whose primordial spirit was frozen, have time to react? He was simply frozen and sealed in the streamer. Chen Ang's unexpected move caught the female cultivator, Tan Yin, unprepared. She was terrified and thought, what is Qin Daoyou's reaction? Could it be that he was moved by the magic treasures and wanted to steal the treasures and kill people? Although the azure glass mirror and the earthwood crystal sand are good, they're just unorthodox magic treasures. Is the magic treasures in Qin Daoyou's hands far better? Why? He wants to steal the treasures and kill people? Could it be that I misjudged him? Then, why did he teach me to purify my foundation and recultivate my magic power? Or is he plotting something bigger? Chen Ong didn't know what was going through her mind, so he just smiled and said, Fellow Taoist, don't worry. I've already guessed that this person should be the enemy we're looking for. Even if it's not, it's most likely related to him. Tan Yin said doubtfully, although fellow Taoist Mo and I aren't old acquaintances, we can't be. Chen Ong raised his hand to interrupt her. Pointing at the one sky water banner, he said, Look again, is he still Dao, friend Mo? Tan Yin turned her head and looked over. Inside the streamer, Reverend Mo's body was slightly distorted. His color faded, and his whole body became blood red as if he was made of blood. Gradually, the color faded, leaving only a smear of blood. Dao friend Mo's face appeared on the blood shadow, sinister and terrifying. This is... Tan Yun was at a loss for words. She pointed at the bloody shadow in the banner. This is a blood god. Chen Ong sighed. I'm afraid fellow Taoist Mo is in trouble. Chen Ong stretched out his hand and peeled off the bloody shadow that wrapped around Reverend Mo. There were still a dozen or so identical bloody shadows hidden inside. They were only the size of a wicker basket. Chen Ong peeled them off one by one and let Tin Yun identify them. They were cultivators from overseas and wandering cultivators nearby. There was no lack of people from Middle Earth among them. So many wandering cultivators from overseas had been refined into blood gods. It was truly insane. I'm afraid this person isn't from overseas, but someone from Middle Earth. Chen Ong calculated the origins of the people who were the first to be refined into blood gods. As expected, they were cultivators from Middle-earth. Tan Yin was already extremely furious. Even though she had always been kind, she couldn't help but scold. Who did this? How could they be so insane? Chen Ong thought, I'm already 80% sure that this is the work of the main god. The Blood God Sutra originated from this land, so it's natural for it to be circulated. It's also reasonable for someone to innovate and create a new world during the circulation. Based on my deduction, the origin of this sutra should be faintly related to Deng Yin. If I didn't know that the Blood God Sutra had an extraterrestrial version, I probably wouldn't have suspected that it was the work of the extraterrestrial demons. This must be the main god's misgivings. He's afraid of being easily spied on. It's similar to how I pinned the origin of the celestial river's mana on cult Master Chin from the other world. If you say there's no relationship between them, I'll be the first to not believe it. His hands didn't stop there. He grabbed the real body of the blood god hidden in one of the bloody shadows. His primordial spirit was controlled by Chanong, so he was unaware and couldn't feel anything in the outside world. Time passed, and he seemed to be dead. Looking at his appearance, he was a young man. His original body had probably been refined into a bloody light. If he continued to make deductions, he could only vaguely deduce that it was an old demon in West Kunlun. That person's mana was profound, and his primordial spirit was sharp enough to see through heaven's secrets. Chin Ong was afraid of rashly alerting the enemy, so he didn't delve deeper. He probed the celestial river's mana into his body. That layer of bloody light looked weak, but it was actually extremely tough. Chin Ong wasn't afraid of easily destroying his soul. He integrated the celestial river's mana into the blood god's mana and sensed the subtleties of his mana from afar. Although it was only for a short time, Chin Ong saw many mysteries. He also discovered a wisp of mana that came from the same source as the Blood God Sutra. However, it was even more vicious and hidden. After studying it carefully, he realized that this person had long been secretly controlled by someone. Although he seemed to be free, his consciousness was actually controlled by someone else. He had already been refined into the Blood God Sutra and only retained a bit of autonomy. However, if that person were to make things difficult for him, he would probably be at the mercy of others. His thoughts would all be controlled by others. Thinking about it further, it was extremely terrifying. Chen Ong thought to himself, fortunately, I made the first move and fixed this person's consciousness, so the Blood God Sutra in his body didn't spread any information. However, I have to deal with it quickly. Otherwise, if this person's consciousness is immersed for a long time, the person controlling him might also find out that something is wrong. He immediately summoned the Golden Ship of Fortune and suppressed the Blood God Sutra. With the power of the Golden Ship of Fortune's restriction, no matter how vicious the Blood God Sutra was, they wouldn't be able to cause any trouble. After informing Tan Yun, he silently used his primordial spirit to deduce the various mysteries of the Blood God Sutra. He didn't know the tricks of the Blood God Sutra's other techniques, but the Blood God Sutra relied on the nameless resentment in the soul to refine the body with magic. It refined the original body into a bloody light that relied on magic. It was best at robbing people's blood, chi, and soul. There was no difference in the first step. They would first peel off their own skin, stab their body with magic, and then refine it with magic. They would suffer for at least 9 years. When the whole body was refined and turned into a bloody shadow, it would be successful. This was also the scheme of the God of Fortune, to hide this sutra. However, the Blood God Sutra skin wasn't engraved with the great Azura demon, but the 49 River Styx Blood Sea True talismans. This time, Chen Ong wanted to deduce the true meaning of these 49 true talismans. Even though he didn't know the mysteries of the other vicious techniques, he knew the fundamentals. Whether it was learning about them in the future or restraining them, he would be confident in plotting against the Blood God's Sutra Master. Moreover, This Blood God Sutra's restriction on the Blood God Sutra was more profound than the Demon Sutra's sutra of suppressing gods and demons that Chenong had learned before. It could be used to refine Guhao's drought demon body into the supreme demon body of the great Asura. Chapter 489. With the blood god's illusions in hand, the 49 River Styx Blood Sea True Talismans in the foundation of the Blood God Sutra could not escape Chin Ang's calculation. In less than half a day, he had gathered 36 true talismans. At this time, the River Styx Blood Sea True Talismans were clear. From Chen Ang's observation, it was worthy of being the true inheritance of the Blood Sea. It could break the void, communicate with the Blood Sea true water of the underworld, and cultivate this kind of filthy and evil Dharma power. Although the Blood Sea true water was not one of the 7 great connate true water, it was still very magical. It was the filthiest true water in the universe. After Chin Ong obtained all 49 true talismans, he could refine the blood god's illusions, Dharma power, into Blood Sea true water. He immediately captured the dozens of blood god's illusions, except for the murderer's true self. Chin Ong waved his hand and shot out 49 true talismans, which turned into a miniature blood river. It covered his head and extracted the blood light from the blood shadows of the blood god's illusions one by one. These blood lights were all filthy Dharma power and souls, except for a bit of true spirit. All of them were transformed into blood god's Dharma power. The blood god's Dharma power circulated in the blood river formed by Chin Ang's Dharma power. Then it was refined into a drop of Blood Sea true water, which fell into Chin Ang's hand. Taoist master Mo's hundreds of years of Dharma power, as well as the Blood Sea true water formed by his body and most of his soul, were only 3 drops. Among the cultivators killed by the murderer, Taoist master Mo's cultivation was not the highest, but he was in the top 3. Otherwise, he would not have been chosen by the murderer as a disguise. Chin Ong refined all the dozens of blood god's illusions, but he only obtained about 20 drops of Blood Sea true water. The Blood Sea true water merged into the heavenly river Dharma power and formed a small blood river. It connected to an unknown space in the void and absorbed traces of blood chi to strengthen itself. The space connected to the river of blood must be the source of all the demonic Tao, the holy land of the great Asura, the boundless Blood Sea. Chin Ong allowed the Blood Sea true water to grow bit by bit. He silently used his primordial spirit to turn this magical power into a part of himself and slowly comprehended it. His primordial spirit connected to the mysterious Blood Sea dimension through the blood river and absorbed the true water within. After a few hours, he suddenly comprehended some principles and transformed the blood river, absorbing a large amount of mixed true water that was the color of blood and turquoise from the void. The blood-like true water suddenly condensed into a turquoise color and expanded into a miniature Milky Way formed by over 100 drops of turquoise true water, drilling into Chen Ang's dantian. The Milky Way formed by the turquoise true water flowed into the heavenly river Dharma power in the dantian without any obstruction. It blended with the other 3 types of true water and opened up another source of magical power. It was one of the 7 types of innate true water, the blue sky underworld. Among the 7 types of innate true water that Chanong cultivated, the blue sky underworld was the most mysterious one. The other 6 types of true water could still be found in the human world, but the blue sky underworld's root was in the manor of the dead, the land of reincarnation, and it was hard to find in the human world. Chin Ong originally thought that the true water would be the hardest to cultivate among the 7 types of true water. Unexpectedly, when Chen Ang's primordial spirit was comprehending the Blood Sea River Styx, he suddenly understood the principle of the Blood Sea River Styx being one. That was when he realized that the true water of the blue sky underworld was different from the other 6 types of innate true water. It was divided into 2 different states, yin and yang, clear and turbid. The Blood Sea referred to the filthy Blood Sea true water in the boundless Blood Sea, while the river Styx referred to the blue sky underworld. Therefore, the Blood Sea River Styx was also known as the blue sky underworld. The Blood Sea true water could also transform into one of the 7 types of connate true water, the blue sky river of underworld. With the help of the blood god, this true water dharma power that was the most difficult to cultivate was successfully cultivated. The spiral-like blue sky river in Chin Ang's dantian spun and transformed into a blood-red sky river. The sky river's dharma power transformed into the blood sea true water. The dharma power wrapped around his primordial spirit and rushed toward the top of his head. Chen Ang's body shook, and a blood-red light emerged from the top of his head. His primordial spirit was like a blood shadow, turning into an existence like the blood god. The changes within were truly astonishing. However, the other 3 types of true water in Chen Ang's body were still there. Soon he opened his eyes and looked at the blood sea primordial spirit opposite him, which was like a blood shadow, the blood god. He was quite surprised. The blue sky underworld, or the blood sea true water, was the most nourishing of the 7 types of true water. It could even be used to attach to the primordial spirit, just like the dark female pearl of the green-robed patriarch and the snow soul pearl of the goddess of calamity Zhang. They were all treasures that could be cultivated into a 2nd primordial spirit. The blood sea sky river contained a quarter of Chin Ang's dharma power. It was born as Chin Ang's 2nd primordial spirit, and it could transform between the 2 types of true water at any time. The 2nd primordial spirit, formed by the blood sea true water, was the blood god. The 49 blood sea true talismans also turned into river Styx true talismans and entered Chen Ang's primordial spirit, becoming the foundation of the 2nd primordial spirit. Chen Ang's 2nd primordial spirit smiled. With a point of its finger, it completely extracted the true spirits of the unlucky cultivators who were cultivated into the blood god. The rest of the souls that were contaminated by the blood god were sucked into its mouth, becoming nourishment for this primordial spirit incarnation, leaving only a little bit of true spirit. Looking at the muddle-headed appearance of the 10 cultivators, Chinong knew that if he allowed them to reincarnate like this, even if they were lucky enough to become adults again, they would inevitably become muddle-headed. They would need to reincarnate at least 6 times before they could complete their souls. He couldn't help but sympathize with them. He turned the blood river dharma power again, turning it into the blue sky river of underworld. He threw the true spirits of the cultivators into it and reincarnated 6 times. When they came out from the blue sky river, the true spirits finally repaired their souls and gave a deep bow to Chinong with gratitude. Chinong also consumed a lot of energy. He used up 3 drops of the blue sky river of underworld. He still bowed to them and said, "Fellow Taoists, it's really a pity that you were met with misfortune. However, I've already repaired your souls. Although your spiritual light was inevitably extinguished, your souls are still intact. If you're lucky in the future, you can still enter the great Tao. The scoundrel who committed such an evil deed will also have his retribution. Everyone, it's getting late. Your souls are weak, so you shouldn't stay in the world of the living for long. Allow me to send you into reincarnation again." With a wave of his sleeve, the blue sky river rotated and sucked the 10 souls into it, throwing them into the place of reincarnation in the unseen world. After these blood god sons entered reincarnation again, only the culprit was left. If Chen Ong hadn't understood the principle of the blood sea and river Styx being one, he would have needed to slowly deal with him and carefully remove his consciousness. However, his blood sea true water dharma power was more profound than the blood god sutra. Compared to the blood sea primordial spirit, the ability of the blood god sun was like a big magician meeting a small magician. Chapter 490. While reading the memory of the murderer, Chinong used the blood sea real water to sense the mastermind on the other side through the secret hand in the murderer's body. Because he was afraid of concealment, he could only disguise the demonic thought as a little distracting thought and slightly pry into some superficial things. Now there was only a blank space, without any useful information. Chun Ong turned the evil thought into a fire and secretly eroded the murderer's true self. The master was the eldest disciple of the West Kunlun Old Devil, Xian Yuan the Great, the Five Obscenity Supreme, and the disciple was nicknamed the Little Silver Bug Chin Gang. A few years ago, Xian Yuan the Great obtained a scroll of devil scripture from somewhere. As the eldest disciple, the Five Obscenity Supreme was taught by the devil scripture. He skinned himself and refined him into a blood god. Even his 9 disciples were killed by him. The Little Silver Bug Chin Gang was the second disciple of the Five Obscenity Supreme. He saw his master sucking the blood of those disciples who refused to follow him and refining them into blood god. He made up his mind and suffered many devil trials. He became the first disciple under the Five Obscenities Supreme to refine a blood god. He was entrusted with the great task of coming to the South Sea to rescue an old senior of the devil cult. Of course, the Five Obscenities Supreme was not being kind. He wanted to take advantage of the fact that Gu Haozi's vitality had not recovered to offer him to his master, Xian Yuan the Great, as a tonic. Needless to say, if it weren't for Chun Ang's interference, there was an 80% chance that he would be able to accomplish this. But now, not only did he give Chun Ang the chance, even the trace of blood god that he used to monitor his disciple had become a way for Chun Ang to control him. Chun Ang could faintly feel that the Five Obscenity Supreme was in the South Sea. He was afraid that he did not trust his disciple, so he followed behind secretly and could grasp the progress at any time. But the most important thing now was to refine Gu Haozi into a great Azura, supreme demon. As long as Gu Haozi was under Chun Ang's control, the Five Obscenity Supreme would not be able to escape from Chun Ang's hands. The female cultivator Tan Yin thought that Chun Ang was interrogating the murderer, so she did not disturb him for the past few days. It was not until Chun Ang had stayed in the golden ship for a long time that she could not help but ask him to go with her to see Gu Haozi and report the matter. Chun Ang saw the greenish-black color on her forehead and knew that this was not of her own will. Most likely, Gu Haozi had spied her secretly and tricked her to test on Chun Ang. This was why Chun Ang had kept Gu Haozi. Of course, he would not alert the enemy. He pretended that nothing had happened and said to Tan Yin, "That person's spells were very powerful. I could not ask with him. Chin Chen with Ong with. I only Gu Haozi's god. He did not want to with him. Chun on spell. God on Gu with his background," he said and said. With him. With, he with and said. Of. Tan Yun's expression suddenly changed. "Then what should we do?" Chun Ong pondered for a moment and said, "There are 3 ways to deal with this. The best way is to ask for help. Amei is the leader of the right path and is the most helpful. I know that the 3 elders of Amei live in the East Sea fishing for AOG. If we go and ask for help, I'm afraid that they will not lack the treasures of true fire and the essence of pure yang. Even if we cannot gather them in a short time, we do not need to be afraid of the person behind that person." Tan Yin was about to show a happy expression, but suddenly the black gas on her forehead pressed down. She frowned and said, "But the journey to the East Sea is far. Now that that person has been captured by you, I'm afraid that person behind us will be alerted today. How will we have the time? Please tell us the next 2 ways." Chun Ang knew that Gu Haozi would not choose this method. Gu Haozi was not a real wandering celestial from overseas. If Amei knew about this, who would they kill to kill the demon? This method was only used to numb Gu Haozi. Now that it was disrupted by him, Gu Haozi might have already noticed the venerable of 5 aphrodisiacs plan. It was when he was at a dead end that the trap behind him would be fruitful. Just as I said before, let fellow Taoist Gu Haozi switch to cultivating the Great Yin form refining technique and refine his slew into the Great Yin true form. Even without true fire, yang, and supreme treasures, he would still be able to break the restrictions. The female cultivator Tan Yin sighed helplessly and said, "If there is really no other way, then this is the only way. Let me talk to Senior Gu Haozi then." The worst way is to take a risk. I have already cultivated the samadhi, true fire, to the primary level. If I am careful, I can already melt the 10,000-year-old cold flower. At that time, I will first move the body of Gu Hao Zi's primordial spirit and find the treasure to dispel the cold. Chenong said the third way. As expected, Tan Yun rejected it immediately and said, "I'm afraid this is too risky." Chenong didn't mind. His other two plans were meant to force Gu Haozi to choose the middle option. It seemed feasible, but for Gu Haozi, who was hiding his identity, it was absolutely impossible for him to choose. It was only use to numb him. After the two of them came to a decision, they dived into the eye of the sea together and came to the cold spring glacier again. Tan Yun reported the situation to Gu Haozi. Gu Haozi had already planted a secret spell on Tan Yun. He only pretended to listen for a while and saw the figure in the glacier cupping his hands and saying, "Thank you for your help, fellow Taoist Chin. Please help me." Chin Ong smiled faintly and said, "That's easy. It's just that the Taiyin form refining technique is very time-consuming. I'm afraid you won't have time to cultivate it, and that person will come to you. His magic power is 100 times stronger than the disciple I caught. I'm also not his match. I'm afraid this place can't be hidden from him. If you are at a critical moment and he comes to disturb you, it will be very dangerous." Gu Haozi sighed and said, "This is fate. If that's the case, there's still a possibility of passing the tribulation. If I don't do anything, I'm afraid I'll have to face the tribulation." Chin Ong pondered for a moment and said, "If that's the case, I can't just stand by and watch. The Taiyin form refining technique still needs the Taiyin star to store the primordial spirit. I know you want to borrow the power of the magic treasure to draw the power of the Taiyin star down. Not to mention that it will take a long time. It will also cause a huge commotion. I have a pearl made of Taiyin true water here. I can give it to fellow Taoist to cultivate." After he said that, he took out the Taiyin God Pearl. As expected, it was rippling with the power of Taiyin true water. It was just an embryonic form and not completely cultivated. There wasn't even a restriction. This made Gu Haozi feel more at ease. He saw that it was indeed Taiyin true water, and the pearl was just an embryo of 1,000 years old profound pearl. It didn't even have a restriction or talisman. So what kind of trap could it have? Moreover, this Taiyin true water was the purest. It couldn't hide any insidious restriction. How would he know that there was an anomaly like Chenong? So he accepted it with ease. The embryo of the profound pearl could not enter the glacier, so it was held in midair by Gu Haozi. With Chin Ong and Tan Yun protecting him, the huge Taiyin God Pearl suddenly released strands of Taiyin true water. Like silver moonlight, it seeped into the glacier and shone on Gu Haozi's remains. It turned into a silver cloud and entered his 7 orifices. The greenish-black corpse gas on Gu Haozi's face suddenly faded a little. After he swallowed that bit of Taiyin true water, it suddenly merged with the nature of Hanba and dissolved the bit of corpse gas fire poison. It cleared Gu Haozi's primordial spirit, and the Xian ice prohibition on his body loosened. He said in surprise, "Fellow Taoist technique is really useful." Chapter 491. Chin Ong laughed and said, "It's good that I can help you. However, there isn't much Taiyin true water left in the Taiyin pearl. I'm afraid it won't be enough for you. Let me guide the moonlight from the sea. It'll be better if we use both at the same time." Tianjing 2. His diligence not only made Tan Yun look at him, but also changed Gu Haozi's opinion of him. He thought, this kid is so warm-hearted. Even though he's a little arrogant, he's not without merit. Even though he doesn't respect me, he's very proactive in helping me escape. He must be someone with a cold face, but a warm heart. Even though I still have to kill him after I escape, I might as well give him some essence blood to turn him into a zombie and take him as my disciple. Chen Ong took out the submerged glass mirror that he got from Taoist Amo and shone it on the sea. A ray of moonlight shone down. His second primordial spirit secretly came out of his body and turned into the blue sky underworld. A bit of green water blended into the moonlight and shone on Guhao Zi's remains. The mana from the blue sky underworld seeped into Guhao Zi's body and was refined by him according to the Taiying form refining technique. The nature of the water remained the same and was best at nourishing the spirit. Guhao Zi instinctively longed for it. If it wasn't for Qin Ang's primordial spirit hiding in it, it would have been really beneficial. He only felt that the mana was nourishing his body and thought it was the Taiying form refining technique. Even though he was secretly wary of the Taiying pearl, it was only a cultivator's instinct. He never suspected that there was anything wrong with the moonlight that Chenong guided. The Taiying true water and blue sky underworld were the world's most precious treasures. Who else could take them out except for Chenong? They were also the two types of true water that could help the Taiying form refining technique the most. In addition, Guhao Zi had accumulated a lot. Even though the essence of the 1,000-year-old jellyfish eroded his body, it inadvertently helped him understand the principles of using water to fight fire and suppressing demons with mysterious ice. Under the suppression of the cold spring, the demonic fire no longer eroded his primordial spirit. This was originally an arrangement made by the mighty being who had sealed him to persuade him to turn over a new leaf, but it also allowed him to comprehend many wondrous techniques of the demonic path. Now that he was using the true form of Yin to temper his demonic body, the great Azura supreme demonic body had truly taken half a step forward, and he had already reached a realm that no one had ever achieved before. Qin Ang's second nascent divinity lurked within his body. Whatever Guhao Zi's nascent divinity comprehended and thought, he transmitted all of it to Chenong, allowing him to understand. Even Guhao Zi's cherishing talent was detected by him, which made Chenong smile. However, this was the transformation of the one and only great Azura Supreme, fiend god in this world. This was a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity, and it was clearly displayed in front of Chenong. Even if Chenong was an anomaly, it was still a great harvest. If other devil cultivators saw this, it would be the supreme devil scripture of this world, enough to make the old devils of West Kunlun break their heads. The demon body was just lacking a bit of primordial spirit that hadn't melted yet. As long as this bit of pure yang was melted, it would become the supreme fiend god and give birth to the first heavenly devil in this world. Guhao Zi's primordial spirit transformed into a trail of devil fire and escaped from the glacier. It entered the Tai-Yin divine pearl and slowly guided the moonlight, tempering the bit of pure yang in his primordial spirit. When the pure yang turned into Tai-Yin, it could enter into the demon body and trigger the transformation of the supreme fiend god. Now that the general trend had been set, Chenong didn't bother to hide his support anymore. With a gentle wave of his hand, the Nine Bends Yellow River Formation was activated with a loud bang. The formation drew the power of heaven and earth, projecting a few thousand miles of moonlight here. It could be seen from the surface of the sea within 10,000 miles. A bright moon grew bigger and bigger, occupying half the sky. However, there was a gap that was slowly eroding the Taiying. Heavenly Dog engulfs the moon. At this moment, Guhao Zi already felt that something was wrong. He roused his spirits and shouted, "Qin Daoyu, why are you doing this?" Qin Ong smiled faintly. "Fellow Taoist Hanba, your master Qin is refining your consciousness. Fellow Taoist, please sacrifice yourself to prove your Tao and achieve the supreme fiend god body of great Azura. You can be my arm and become my incarnation." The female cultivator, Tan Yun at the side, was dumbfounded. She asked with a trembling voice, "Qin Daoyu, Senior Guhao Zi, you too?" She no longer had any value to him. So why would Guhao Zi still keep her? With a thought, he triggered the hidden hand in her body. Tan Yun suddenly screamed and her eyes turned red. She wanted to pounce towards Qin Ong. Chen Ong had already made up his mind. He stretched out his hand and flicked his finger. The Samadhi devil refining, true fire circled around her body. refining away the hidden hand in her body and allowing her to regain consciousness. Qin Daoyu, who exactly is this Gu Haozi? Tan Yin still had no idea that she was being plotted against. She asked Chenong in shock, "What exactly happened?" Chenong said slowly, "Fellow Taoist Tan, that Gu Haozi is not a senior cultivator. He is a sealed drought demon. He wants to trick us to save him. Allow me to refine this evil creature first. Then I will explain to fellow Taoist." As he finished, he scattered his crown and performed the heavenly dipper steps, performing the heavenly demon dance. In terms of the devil path, Chen Eng's research was even deeper than Gu Haozi's. Now that he was using the devil to counter the devil, how could he resist? Seeing that his primordial spirit was sinking again, Chenong used the lunar pearl to keep his real spirit. He carved the blood sea true water onto the 49 river Styx true talisman and refined it with the Samadhi devil refining true fire. Internally, his primordial spirit was cultivating the lunar shape refining technique. Externally, Chenong used the Blood God Sutra and the supreme magic sacrificial refinement of the devil path. Gu Haozi could only curse endlessly. What a ruthless thief! How dare you! The righteous path of the mystic door. No, this is the spell of the devil path. Such a profound spell of the devil path. Who exactly are you? He cursed for 3/4 of an hour. Seeing that his last shred of self was about to sink, he knew Chen Eng's methods. He understood that after he sank, his real spirit might not be able to escape. He turned around and begged, "Qin Daoyu, please let my real spirit reincarnate. I, Gu Haozi, will never forget your great kindness." Chenong sighed and said, "It's not that I want to torture you. It's just that the supreme demon body of Great Azura that I need you as a material. I don't need your soul to dissipate and your spirit to be destroyed. I only need to refine you into a talisman consciousness, an artificial intelligence-like consciousness, so that the power of the supreme technique of the devil path won't be affected. Please grant me my wish, fellow Taoist." This time, Gu Haozi didn't even have the strength to curse. He just cried, and his primordial spirit turned into a bit of real spirit and merged into the lunar pearl. He refined the lunar blood demon and threw it into the transforming demon body. Like water falling into a pot of oil, the demon body suddenly changed. With the second primordial spirit presiding inside and Chen Eng's real body responding from the outside, the supreme demon body's transformation went smoothly. Not long after, the remains of Gu Haozi's drought demon body grew many black scales. A wave of demon fire burned through the restriction, allowing this extremely ugly and tall great Azura body that was wrapped in demon fire to break free from the glacier. The wondrous appearance of heavenly flowers and the sea of blood gushed out from the ground. Chen Eng's second primordial spirit that sat in the demon body opened its mouth and sucked in the endless sea of blood in the void. In an instant, the world of Shu Mountain was as red as blood. The hearts of the surrounding experts were shaken. West Kunlun, East Sea. People everywhere in the great eastern wilderness and the divine central continent exclaimed in shock, "A heavenly demon has actually appeared!" Has the devil path flourished? Chenong didn't have time to care about the impact of his actions. He focused on analyzing and promoting the changes of this supreme demon body. The scaly body of the great Azura demon king twisted and turned into Chen Eng's appearance, standing side by side with his real body. The wondrous fragrance of heavenly flowers in the air gradually faded. The sea of blood on the ground had long been sucked clean by the blood-colored light well behind the demon body. Chen Eng's blood sea primordial spirit had reached great success among the 7 types of true waters, becoming a heavenly demon. Now, other than the supreme demon body of the great Azura, there was also the primordial spirit of the river Styx blood demon hidden within. Even if the two were separated, they were still devils of the heavenly demon level. They were both complete versions of Chenong. The river Styx blood demon Ji said, "Today, I am Forefather River Styx. The supreme heavenly demon body opened its mouth and used the heavenly demon true voice. I am enlightened Apocalypse. Ch'en-Ang's primordial spirit shook its head and said, It's just my second primordial spirit and a spare corporeal body. Even though the fate energy is separated, it's just to confuse the heavenly secrets. Their essence is the same. My third true name is still Chenong. However, in order to separate the fate energy and conceal the heavenly secrets, I can't say my true name. Otherwise, the fate energy will be the same, and it will be easy for others to predict. The two of you shall call yourselves these two names for now. Chapter 492. Although the great Azura's supreme demon body was an armored monster with an extraordinary face, there was no flaw when it transformed into Ch'en-Ang's original appearance. This was because the supreme demon body was not a living creature, nor was it made of flesh and blood. It was like the celestial beings of the Nirvana world and the ancient innate gods. It was the manifestation of the great Tao. Therefore, it was ever-changing and did not have a fixed form. Sounds of nature, the devil body clad in towering armor, with red arms and feet, stepping on a Chinese alligator, was only a Dharma form. It did not prevent Chenong from walking with his own appearance. Moreover, even a perfected golden immortal wouldn't be able to notice such a change. If it was not for this supernatural power, how could the Azura in the blood sea compete with Buddhism? It even tempted many sons of Buddha to fall. With the transformation of Ch'en-Ang's demon body, it was not difficult for others to see through it. However, there was a flaw in Tanyan. Although she did not know much, if she fell into the hands of Xianyuan the Great, it would not be difficult for him to see the problem with his wisdom. He immediately separated a strand of blood god and planted it into Tanyan's mind. With the natural function of the blue sky underworld water, he modified her memory. Now, she only remembered that Qin Gang, the blood god, intended to plot against Gu Haozi and expose his identity as Hamba. However, she did not expect that Hamba would devour many blood gods and trigger the transformation of the demon body. At the critical moment, Chenong activated the prohibition spell. With the help of the cold spring spell, he resealed Hanba, who had not completed his transformation. Qin Gang also escaped with serious injuries. Now that Gu Haozi's demon body had been formed, the prohibition spell could not hold him for long. Therefore, the two of them went around asking for help. Then he sent this memory to the blood god's mana hidden in the demon body. Through a vague feeling, the Lord of Five Desires knew the truth. In a cave of the sea country, 10,000 miles away, a man dressed in southern barbaric clothing suddenly jumped up in rage. He turned into a streak of bloodlight and sucked up all the essence and blood of the people who were captured outside the cave. He didn't even let go of the souls who were usually unwilling to commit sins and reincarnate. His illusionary figure dissipated, revealing a bloody shadow with a blurred face and a ferocious and terrifying face. Lord Five Evils sensed Qin Gang, who was faintly discernible and intermittent, as if he could die at any moment. He yelled, "You've ruined my plan. How can I let you go?" He used his mana, and the blood god's mana tortured Qin Gang until he was hovering between life and death. It was only because of the important matter that he stopped and sent a thought over, "Get over here and see me." When Chenong received the voice transmission, he sneered coldly. He had already used his Yuan Shin, heavenly star, to pinpoint the position of Lord Five Desires. He also took the opportunity to trigger his nameless Een flame and sent the blood sea true water into his body. Lord Five Desires only felt anger burning in his heart. Although he used his true chi to suppress the demonic thoughts, he didn't take it to heart. The heart of the demon sect was actually the most important because there were often external demons and internal demons causing trouble. It was easy for the demons to devour one's true self and be doomed eternally. However, how could these demons have such knowledge? They just treated it as a normal reaction. Those old demons who really understood the situation didn't want to remind them, afraid that it would increase their own doom. How could the blood god planted by Chun Ong be ordinary? If Lord Five Desires didn't have any distracting thoughts, it would be fine. Otherwise, every distracting thought would be nourishment for the blood god's growth. As long as one couldn't see one's true self and understand the difference between the thoughts of one's true self and the nameless distracting thoughts, there would be countless distracting thoughts every day. Sooner or later, the blood god of River Styx would devour one's true self and become a blood god controlled by Chinong. Moreover, during this process, one wouldn't feel anything wrong. Instead, one's magic power would increase by leaps and bounds. If one didn't understand that this was a sign of the blood god's magic power being eroded, one would mistakenly think that the magic power of the blood god sutra required endless distracting thoughts to improve. If Xianyuan the Great was here, he would naturally be wary of the distracting thoughts and deal with them by suppressing the external demons. Although it couldn't remove the hidden danger, it wouldn't be difficult to make it difficult for Chinong to use his methods. However, although Lord Five Desires was valued by Xianyuan the Great, how could he understand the principle of the demon sect, using demons to control demons and not to be controlled by demons? He thought that the demon sect could do as they pleased, but he didn't know that there was a principle of following one's heart and nature. If one didn't follow one's true nature, one would be considered an external demon in the demon sect and needed to be eradicated. The demon sect followed the heart, while the Buddhist sect collected the heart. Although the methods were different, the heart didn't change. It was a round, shining, indomitable heart that couldn't be worn down by thousands of tribulations. Therefore, the Buddha and the demon were two sides of the same body. If Chun Ong manifested it with the blood sea true water, it would be the river Styx blood demon primordial spirit. If it manifested with the blue sky netherworld true water, it would be the Ksitigarbha's great wish Dharmakaya. Just as Chinong was slowly savoring the Buddha and the demon sect, the female cultivator Tenyin had already woken up. When she saw Chinong, she immediately asked, "Did you let the demon escape?" When she heard that the seal was intact, she heaved a sigh of relief and said, "It's all because I was blinded by lard that I was deceived by him and almost caused a disaster. Chan Daoyu, that demon is very powerful, so the cold springs restriction won't be able to trap him for long. Fellow Daoyu, please go and invite your friends to come and slay the demon. I will also go and invite Exan Rushinan and the 3 celestials of Eastern Sea. We must refine him to death." This idea of hers was originally planted by Chinong, so how could he refuse? He nodded and said that's how it should be. He then used the golden ship to send her up. After Tan Yun bid farewell to him, she used the Ice Soul Divine Light Escape and went straight to Eastern Sea. Chun Ong calculated that it would take about 3 months for her to call for reinforcements, which was enough for him to stir up a storm. Immediately, his physical body transformed into a black-clothed, cold-faced young man. Looking at the golden ship beneath his feet, he smiled and said, "This treasure is too eye-catching. I'm afraid I can't use it anymore." Then he reached out and wiped the 12 Moons Waterscape sword. The water-colored sword light's gold attribute was awakened, and a layer of silver hairs covered it. The one sky water banner in his left hand shook, and it turned into a black banner. His expression was cold, and his hair was disheveled. He wore a black Taoist robe and a pair of straw sandals. He held a demonic banner in his hand, and he looked like an unorthodox cultivator. With a shake of his hand, a water mirror circular light appeared. After taking a look at his own appearance, Chin Ong nodded in satisfaction. Then he used the silver conveyance light and went straight to where the venerable one of 5 desires was. The celestial river's mana corresponded with the celestial stars, and it merged with the sword light. Then he teleported thousands of miles in the air and landed on a bustling sea. This sea country had a flourishing population. There were dozens of islands with a population of about 4 to 5 million people. However, the system was rather peculiar. It was a sea country ruled by dozens of clans, unlike the great Ming dynasty, which had common ruler. These clans were the rulers of the islands, and most of them were cultivators of unorthodox schools from overseas who had mana. They settled down here and established their clans. The population of the sea country depended on them to live, and they were considered the private properties of the cultivators of the unorthodox schools on the islands. The children of these cultivator clans ate and wore the same things as the nobles, and their words were the law. Because of this, the people on the island were no strangers to cultivators. When they saw Chun Ang's conveyance light from afar, someone came to welcome him. Chun Ang saw that the island was decorated with lanterns and colored banners. There were golden flowers and silver trees everywhere, and the stairs were made of white jade. There were even 3 tall pavilions built at the port. The beams were made of sandalwood, and the pillars were made of gold and jade. Then he saw a gray conveyance light descending on the tall pavilion. Someone went up to welcome him, and the conveyance light descended as well. He saw a rich man dressed like a green-robed butler coming up, and he asked, "Is there a happy event here? Why are you welcoming cultivators from all over?" The green-robed butler smiled and bowed. "Immortal Master, you may not know this, but our island master, Old Man Bayen, is celebrating his 200th birthday. He has invited immortals from all over. As long as they are willing to come, they will be given gifts. Immortal Master, please come with me." Chapter 493. Chun Ang followed the green-clothed butler and slowly learned about the situation. This island was the largest and most populated island in the archipelago. The clan on this island was the bloodline of the rogue cultivator, Old Man White Crag. They had settled here for 100 years. Because Old Man White Crag's surname was Lu, they were called the Lu clan. The White Rock Elder was also one of the individual cultivators in the archipelago with the highest cultivation. He was already an individual immortal and was quite famous overseas. The status of overseas Taoist cultivators was highly respected. Along the way, Chun Ang was also treated as a distinguished guest. The steward in green brought him to the front of a mansion. Another 2 servants came up to invite him to settle down in the building, and 4 maids came up to serve him. Chun Ang couldn't stand it and asked them to leave. This building was in a corner of the huge mansion. Outside the window, there were gardens everywhere. It occupied hundreds of square meters, and there were more than 300 pavilions. Even the Ming Dynasty's palace couldn't compare. Thinking of the sea people on this island who could only live in thatched houses, were skinny and had no clothes to cover their bodies, Chun Ang couldn't help but sneer. Although he sensed that the Lord of 5 Aphrodisiacs was in the most gorgeous building, Chun Ang didn't want to act rashly. Every day, he only used spells to attract the Son of Blood and devoured his original self. 3 days later, someone came to invite the owner of this place, Immortal White Rock, for his birthday. When Chun Ang arrived at the banquet hall hosted by the Old Man White Crag, he was among the last few people. Presumably, the Lu family did not pay much attention to him. When they invited people, they treated him according to their relationship and abilities. Seeing that Chun Ang was young, they did not take him seriously. Chun Ang arrived late and had to sit with the last one. He didn't mind. When Chun Ang arrived, an individual cultivator who was sitting near the front came out and shouted, "The barbarians of the Black Sand Island are here to perform spells for the White Rock Elder to celebrate his boundless longevity." This name sounded familiar to Chun Ang. He seemed to have killed a person who claimed to be from the Black Sand Island in the Mermaid Kingdom's Cheonghai Kingdom's palace. Now that he heard it, the omen was not good. The entire Lu family should be wiped out. Then Man Xian cupped his fists towards a pale-faced young man who was standing beside Old Man White Crag. He wore a golden ring in his hair and said, "Congratulations to Prince Lu Guan. May you live a long life and enjoy immortal happiness forever." The young man grinned and said, "Uncle Man, you don't have to be so polite. Please congratulate Grandfather on my behalf. I have a blood coral collected from the bottom of the sea. If you can make Grandfather happy, I will give it to you." When the man heard this, He was overjoyed. He bowed and said with a flattering smile, "Thank you for your reward, Your Highness." He made a comical expression, causing the young man to laugh out loud. One of the wandering cultivators beside him whispered, "Young Master Lu may be young, but he is already the #1 young hero of the 46 islands. He is indeed a cultivation genius." The person beside him raised his voice even louder. "Yes, I heard that young Master Lu can already control the sword and fly in the sky. It's really amazing." Although the two of them whispered to each other, everyone in the hall could hear them. Who in the hall could not tell what they were thinking? Looking at the proud look on the young man, Lu Guan, many of them scolded in their hearts, "Bootlicker!" Even old man White Crag, who was sitting on the main seat, had a happy look on his face. He stroked his beard and laughed. He turned his head to the left and whispered something to a barbarian with triangular eyes. It was obvious that he was praising his grandson. This man was Xian Yuan the Great's first disciple, Lord of 5 Desires. Qin Ong came here for this man and couldn't help but take a few more glances. Unexpectedly, Lord of 5 Desires was very sharp. He suddenly raised his head and looked back. His mana was not as strong as others, but he could tell that Chen Ong was not an ordinary person. Not to mention anything else, just the aura he exuded was something that no one present could compare to. Instantly, he became interested and looked at Chen Ong unexpectedly. His gaze was seen by someone sitting below, and he was instantly angered. Lu Guan's happy look disappeared, and he could no longer maintain his calmness. He cursed in his heart. Where did this kid come from? How dare he spoil my plans? Lord of 5 Desires is a direct disciple of the West Kunlun sect. She is the first disciple of enlightened Master Xian Yuan the Great. My grandfather had to beg many favors before she was willing to look at me. If I were to become her disciple, I would never be able to enjoy her for the rest of my life. This kid is young and good-looking. Judging from Reverend 5 Desires' expression, it seems like he is quite interested in him. You dare to spoil my plans. I will make sure you suffer the consequences. Although he was shrewd, he couldn't help but reveal his true colors in his anger. Man Xian had already started his performance. He breathed out a cloud and waved his hand. Many golden-armored deities and high-crowned true immortals flew out from his sleeves, riding dragons and cranes. A heavenly palace appeared in the cloud. There were mortals feasting and heavenly maidens dancing. Among them, the man sitting on the main seat was the Emperor of Heaven. Coincidentally, he had the appearance of Old Man White Crag. The first crown prince also had the appearance of Lu Guan. Instantly, the hall was filled with cheers, but Chinong didn't know whether to laugh or cry. The celestial emperor from the upper realm let out a sigh. The 18 generations of ancestors of the Lu clan were going to die. He didn't know what kind of courage he had to use this as a show. Indeed, the more stupid one is, the bolder one is. Even if he knew that the celestial emperor from the upper realm wouldn't cause trouble, Mauname wouldn't dare to do this, even if they were given 18 times more courage. Yet he saw it in the banquet of a heretical aristocratic family that was like an ant compared to Mauname. Chin-An actually had a feeling that this trip was not in vain just because of this matter. At this moment, the performance had reached its climax. Man Xian pointed his finger, and a rope flew out and hung on the cloud palace. He climbed up the rope and disappeared into the clouds. Then a little man with the same facial features as him came out of the heavenly palace. He first kowtowed to the Emperor of Heaven, then to the Crown Prince of Heaven, and was rewarded with a celestial peach. Then he flew down from the clouds. In a flash, Man Xian jumped down from the clouds. He held a big peach in his hand and presented it to the celestial emperor. Man Xian went to the heavenly palace and asked for a peach from the celestial emperor to present to Old Man White Crag and His Majesty Lu Guan. May the Old Man Xian live as long as the heavens and enjoy immortal happiness forever. As soon as he said this, everyone cheered. Many people took the opportunity to bow down and shouted in unison. May the old man Xian and the crown prince live as long as the heavens, and enjoy immortal happiness forever." The flattery of these people caused Chinong to be exposed. There were only a few people sitting still in the hall like him, and he was the only one sitting below, which made him stand out. Old man White Crag was displeased when he saw this, but he didn't want to cause trouble for the birthday celebration, so he pretended not to see it. Lu Guan was even more furious, and secretly gave Man Xian a look. Man Xian understood, and suddenly said, "The king of hell in the underworld heard about the old man Xian's birthday celebration, and he also sent a congratulatory gift. Allow me to get it for the old man Xian." He waved his hand, and a black fog appeared on the ground. It really looked like the abyss of the Nine Earths, and there was a ghost city underneath it. Ox Head, Horse Face, Yanjun, and the Emperor could be seen vaguely. Chapter 494. Chin Ong could only see illusions forming in front of him. It was as if he was in the 18 levels of hell, filled with the torture of evil spirits. How could he not know that he had fallen into someone's trap? Although this kind of thing can hardly confuse him. The naked eye can still see the surrounding hall. The surrounding guests all have a look of watching a good show. His own image is also projected in the illusion, is about to be captured by the imp. Man Xian used the paper doll to create a scene of hell, and Chinong was imprisoned in the hell of tongue-pulling. The illusion in front of him was also the torture of evil spirits who were trying to pull out Chin Ang's tongue with pliers. Yen Jun, who was in the middle, shouted, "The human world's patriarch by Yen is blessed. How dare you be a demon during his birthday? Drag him away and walk away from the 18 levels of hell. But if you come again, you will be sent to reincarnation in the path of the beast." Chun Ong looked at Lu Guan, who was laughing coldly, and Old Man Bai Yen was also laughing, pretending not to see anything. Chun Ong laughed coldly in his heart. There is no door to fortune or misfortune. Only people bring it upon themselves. Is it not good to be alive? Did Old Man Bai Yen think that he has lived too long, so he came to find me? Although the illusion in front of him was extremely tragic, Chinong sat there leisurely, and with a thought, the arcane energy of the heaven river of underworld entered the illusion black fog. The scenery of hell changed, and Man Xian was shrunk by 10 times, swapped with his paper doll. Then the heaven river of underworld triggered a bit of consciousness, falling into the illusion and turning into the underworld general of underworld. It was the will of the underworld general of underworld, formed by the heaven river of underworld. When it saw this, it was furious and shouted, "How dare you? Do you think you will not enter reincarnation?" He raised his sword, and no matter how Man Xian begged for mercy, he cut him into 8 pieces on the spot. He glared at the other cultivators in the hall, smiled coldly, cupped his fists to thank Chinong, and sucked Man Xian's soul away. Everyone felt a chill run down their spines. Only 5 Lust and a few others felt their expressions change. They knew how powerful this was. Everyone else, including Old Man White Stone, thought that it was just an illusion. Even though their expressions were unsightly, they only felt like they had lost face. Chunong was the first to reveal himself. He cupped his fists and sighed. "That fellow Taoist came to the underworld with me. Unfortunately, he was discovered by Yen Jun. He couldn't escape in time and was chopped into 8 pieces by the patrolling netherworld generals. What a pity." As soon as he finished speaking, the black fog dispersed, revealing only Man Xian's mutilated corpse. A commotion broke out in the hall. Someone stood up and angrily rebuked, "Who are you? How dare you commit murder in Ancestor Whitestone's hall?" The White Crag elder's face turned ashen. He was obviously furious. On the other hand, the Lord of 5 Desires and the other unorthodox disciples looked serious. The White Crag elder suppressed his emotions and shouted, "All right, it's a joyous occasion. Don't disturb my birthday banquet." After he finished speaking, he coldly ignored Chinong, showing off his prestige. How could such an ant-like person attract Qin Ang's attention. Unfortunately, he was doomed. Lu Guan stood up and said, "Everyone, please give my grandfather face and specially come to congratulate him. I have presented many gifts and displayed my best spells. I wonder what kind of spells do you have? Can I offer them to everyone? Please give me face." Chen Ong thought to himself, "Do you think I'm a monkey for you to see? Who do you think you are? You are not worthy of me giving you face. Do you know that the person who asked me to give you face is already dead?" Lu Guan saw that Lu Guan spoke politely, unlike the Mermaid Palace, who killed everyone in the hall. Lu Guan smiled patiently and said, "It's just a small skill. I don't want to embarrass myself." The White Crag Elder, who was sitting on the main seat, had an ugly expression. Lu Guan was also smiling coldly at him. The surrounding lackeys started to clamor, "Brat, don't be so shameless! How dare a mere child offend Master Lu? If you still refuse to kneel and beg for mercy, Ancestor White Crag will definitely kill your entire family. Impudent! You are courting death." Chenong was almost amused. He stood up and looked around. "Since everyone is so enthusiastic, I will not hide my skills. Let me show you my unique spell, the Great Liberation Celestial Light." Lu Guan thought that he had given in and thought it's too late to bow down now. He had already regarded Chenong as a dead man. He looked down at Chenong and sneered, "The Great Liberation Celestial Light? How arrogant!" The White Crag Elder looked at him lovingly and said to Chenong in a commanding tone, "Tell us about it." The esteemed 5 aphrodisiac looked at the two of them in astonishment. He was rather bewildered. However, Chenong did not seem to mind his insulting tone at all. He smiled and said, "When this great liberation celestial light shines on a person's body, it will give birth to 12 types of heavenly flowers. It will make one sweat, and one will hear the sound of tranquil music. It will cleanse one's body, refine one's immortal bones, and ascend." When he said this, the crowd burst into laughter. Everyone looked at him as if he was a clown. Someone shook his head and laughed. "Nonsense! How can there be such a thing?" Lu Guan also asked, "Is what you said true?" Chenong laughed and said, "It's absolutely true. If you don't believe me, let me show you." When he said this, everyone looked at him. Chenong flipped his right palm, and the divine light of magnetism of Een had already shone on Old Man White Crag. The divine light of magnetism rubbed against Old Man White Crag, and Old Man White Crag's soul was destroyed. His corpse turned into ashes, and only a wisp of green smoke remained. At this moment, everyone was stunned. The sound of a wine glass falling to the ground could be clearly heard in the hall. Chenong slowly retracted his right palm and laughed. "Everyone, look! The White Crag Elder has become an immortal and ascended." Lu Guan's face turned green and his lips trembled. The crowd was in an uproar. Someone whispered, "Is this great liberation celestial light real?" Even the esteemed 5 aphrodisiac and the others looked at Chenong in astonishment. In the entire hall, only Chenong was leisurely and leisurely. He even had the mood to smile at Lu Guan. When Lu Guan saw the look in his eyes, he was so frightened that he sat paralyzed on the chair. After a long time, when the White Crag Elder did not appear, he struggled to get up and kneeled at the feet of the esteemed 5 aphrodisiac. He cried, "Esteemed one, that murderer tried to kill my grandfather in broad daylight. Esteemed one, you have to uphold justice for me." The esteemed 5 aphrodisiac coldly shook off Lu Guan's hand and smiled at Chenong. He said, "Didn't your grandfather obtain benevolence and become an immortal? What's the use of begging me?" Lu Guan's forehead was full of sweat, and he begged incessantly. The esteemed 5 aphrodisiac became impatient with him. He waved his sleeve and flung Lu Guan away. Lu Guan sat paralyzed on the ground. When he saw the indifferent look on Chenong's face, he suddenly shouted, "Evil Taoist! Everyone, let's kill that evil Taoist!" Chenong sighed. Suddenly, Lightning struck down and killed 70% of the guests and young Master Lu Guan. He laughed and said, "The White Crag Elder is in heaven and can't bear to part with this grandson of his. He has summoned everyone up for another feast and begged me to send them on their way." He turned his head and asked the remaining people, "What do you think?" The remaining people in the hall were trembling. How could they dare to talk back? They could only agree with a trembling voice. Chapter 495. After Qin Ang's killing spree, there were less than 10% of the unorthodox cultivators left in the hall. With the help of Venerable Five Obsessions, what was supposed to be a birthday banquet was turned into a funeral for the entire Lu clan. The good thing was that the black-robed young man that Chun Ong had transformed into did not arouse any suspicions. Even if he said that he was from the mystic door, those who witnessed his killing spree would still have some doubts. Chin Ong glanced at the many people in the hall. He had killed almost all of the people who made a ruckus earlier. Now, who was left here that did not know what was going on? They saw that Chin Ong was ruthless. Although they were angry, they were even more afraid. The two great liberation celestial lights just now were indeed ruthless. The famous old man White Crag did not even leave a corpse behind. These people were not as capable as old man White Crag, so they were very obedient. Seeing this, Chinong shouted, "Is there anyone else who is envious of your celestial cultivation? I will not hesitate to fulfill your wish." Chinong repeated this twice, but no one dared to reply. Most of the remaining people covered their faces and left. Only a dim light could be seen flying away. Chin Ong turned his gaze to the three people in the hall who had not moved yet. He heard Venerable Five Obsessions say, "My friend's great vital divine light is very marvelous and admirable. How should I address you?" Chin Ong said plainly, "My Taoist name is River Styx." Venerable Five Obsessions could hear the faint murderous intent in his words. The sharpness in it made his heart turn cold. He could not help but think, what a murderous talent! This person is really cruel and merciless. I am afraid that he would even dare to kill me if there is a disagreement. That fellow Qin Gang ruined my plans. Now that Guhao Zi's cultivation has improved, but he is trapped by the seal. If I want Master to refine him into a blood deity, I will need the help of fellow demon sect cultivators. This person is so powerful. How can I not make use of him? Then he secretly deduced Chen Ang's background, only to feel that the mysteries of the heavens were obscure, among which there was a copious, murderous aura of indiscriminate killing that traversed across. Then he saw two streaks of sword aura. One was Yuantu, the other was Avicii. His heart could not help but be in a perilous state. It's actually the orthodox, demonic path. This person's orthodoxy was indeed from the Blood Sea. It was probably an ancient orthodoxy that appeared out of nowhere due to the appearance of the heavenly demon. In this way, this person will definitely enter my family. With that thought, he smiled and said, "So it's fellow Taoist River Styx. I can see that fellow Taoists' dermic powers are also from the sea of blood lineage. Today's celebration of Old Man White Crag's birthday is just a pretense. I have invited all of you here because I have something important to discuss. It has to do with the appearance of the Southern Sea heavenly demon a few days ago. Our demonic path has not had a heavenly demon leader for hundreds of years. Now that the senior has taken a step forward, it is a matter of great importance. That is why I am shamelessly asking for everyone's help." Other than Chinong and Venerable Five Aphrodisiac, there were still two people in the hall who had not left. They were probably the demonic path people invited by Venerable Five Aphrodisiac. Chinong secretly observed their dermic powers. As expected, they were the best among the rogue immortals, old demons who had lived for many years. One of the naked barbarian women sneered and said, "Five Aphrodisiac, if you have something to say, say it quickly. The appearance of the heavenly demon has caused everyone to move. If it is just a small matter, don't blame me, Hu Jiao Jiao, for not giving you face." The other man in linen also snorted coldly. His attitude was self-evident. Venerable 5 Aphrodisiac pondered for a while, then slowly said, "Other than my friend River Styx, who was invited by me, there are also Fairy Lady Wan Miao, Su Feinyang, Xuandu's Feather Warrior Lin Yuan, Lin Shan Cult Master Tushan Old Man, and others who are not here yet." Fairy Lady Wan Miao also invited a few friends from the extreme West cult, a few fellow cultivators who studied with her on Mount Wutai, a few juniors from the Western Devil Cult and Southern Devil Cult, and the abandoned disciples of the Heavenly Lust Cult. If they don't come, I can't say it out loud. But my Shifu, Xian Yuan the Great, has predicted this. We have to invite all of our fellow cultivators. If there are only a few of us, we will definitely become a thorn in the side of those hypocrites. Qianong could tell that Hu Jiaojiao was from the Devil Cult, and the man in linen was from another sect. Chun Eng's current corporeal body was the supreme heavenly devil body. What kind of fiend god could escape from his senses? At first glance, he could tell that Hu Jiaojiao's natal fiend gods were the 6 devils of the world of desire. In this world, the fiend god with such power must be the disciple of the red body cult's master, Ju Pan Pa. The red body cult's master was originally a barbarian woman. Later, because she was disappointed in love, she entered the mountain out of jealousy and anger. She met an elder of the devil cult who had been in closed-door training for many years. She was taught 3 devil scriptures and was ordered to establish the red body cult. At that time, Ju Pan became a new force in the cult. Almost no one could defeat her. The supreme heavenly devil cult's master boasted that the devils she cultivated were either evil souls or the souls of zombies, skeletons, and unorthodox demons. They did not harm mortals. However, after being warned by the long-brow spiritual master, they cleaned up the cult, and the cult rules became stricter. This Hu Jiaojiao was probably the abandoned disciple of the red body cult, someone who had left the cult in the past. And that man in hemp clothes should be the disciple of Mount Hua's master Lai Hua. But Mount Hua had too many evil followers, so he did not know who he was. Since the 5 evils Zhan had already invited so many people from the devil cult, the general situation was already in place. Therefore, Chun Eng's usefulness had dropped a lot. Moreover, if the 5 evils Zhan was allowed to take the initiative, it would be easier to lure out his cautious master, Xian Yuan the Great. With this thought in mind, Chen Ong suddenly said, "Why is the 5 evils Zhan being secretive? Since it has something to do with the heavenly devil, this matter cannot escape from helping that senior escape. If I want to ascend to the Azura demon world, I must obtain that senior's teachings. If you know the whereabouts of senior heavenly devil, I will naturally do my best to help. Why do you need to care about it?" His voice had not yet fallen when Hu Jiaojiao and the old man were shaken. She rushed to the 5 evils Zhan and said, "5 evils, is this true?" Without waiting for the 5 evils Zhan to reply, she muttered to herself, "Yes. Unless this is the case, how can it be called the general situation? Fellow Taoist River Styx, the 5 evils Zhan, I'm afraid you already know that Senior Heavenly Devil is in trouble and wants to use it to fight against the righteous path." The man in hemp clothes also excitedly said, "If we can save that Senior Heavenly Devil, not to mention the benefits of magic treasures and Tao techniques, if we can be accepted as a disciple, we will also have the hope of achieving the Heavenly Devil fruit in the future. For you people from the Devil cult, this is very important. This matter will certainly attract the mystic door and the righteous path to stop it. It will be impossible to succeed unless we invite all the people from the same path." Hu Jiaojiao did not finish listening to his words. She excitedly interrupted, "I agree to this matter. 5 evils Zhan, among us, I'm afraid only you know the whereabouts of that senior. I will take you as the leader this time, but please tell us the location so that we can study it together." The 5 evils Zhan did not expect Chenong and the others to figure out the crux of the problem so quickly. His face turned ugly, and he said, "Hu Jiaojiao, since I am the leader, I should be the one to make the plan. What do you mean by this? The man in hemp clothes sneered. Now that the righteous path has not reacted in time, with the combined strength of the four of us, we may be able to save the senior heavenly devil. Won't you ruin our plan by delaying it? Seeing that the five evils Jean seemed to be persuaded, he went one step further and said, Don't think that this is an important secret. Every minute that passes, this secret loses some of its value. If the righteous path launches a full-scale attack and takes over the place where that senior is sealed, what is the use of keeping the secret? The five evils Jean sneered. How arrogant! Heavenly Devil Gu Haozi was sealed by Taoist Red Staff in the past. The restrictive spell is extremely powerful. Even when he achieved the supreme Heavenly Devil body, he could not escape. Who do you think you are? How dare you boast that you can help the senior escape? Chapter 496. After they turned against 5 obsessions, the atmosphere became tense. The man in sackcloth wanted to say something, but when he heard Immortal Red Staff of the Great Wilderness, he shut his mouth. Although Immortal Red Staff was not famous, disciples of big sects like him knew that he was one of the earth spirits with the highest cultivation in the universe. It was only because he could not bear to lose his disciples that he could not get the celestial immortal karma rank and ascend to heaven. The skyscraping devil was sealed by such a figure. Even if the skyscraping devil broke out of the seal, he would have to be careful not to mention an individual immortal like him. Seeing that they did not press him any further, 5 obsessions flicked his sleeves and said, We need to work together to solve this problem. We must not fight among ourselves and let the hypocrites of the mystic door laugh at us. Several fellow Taoists have already sent word to me. They are traveling through the night and will arrive in a few days. Let's wait for them first. After that, they parted on bad terms, forcing 5 obsessions to tell them where the skyscraping devil was sealed was fruitless. Chun Ong returned to the attic where he lived a few days ago. The Liu family on the island had all been killed by 5 obsessions, and most of the servants and maids had left. Only a few clever manservants did not run away with their belongings. Instead, they stayed in Chun Ang's attic to fawn on him. There were still a few days before the other evil men arrived. Chun Ong thought that it was not appropriate to use the magic he had learned, and the magic weapons he refined were all from the righteous path. It would be better to practice a few more diabolism skills to show his identity as a direct disciple of the diabolism, River Styx. Besides, his Blood River Dharma power was both righteous and demonic. He could switch between the blue sky underworld and the blood sea. It would be a pity if he did not cultivate the identity of a giant of the diabolism. The magic of the diabolism is fierce. I am proficient in many mystic magic arts, but some of them are evil and I do not know them. As for the other powerful skills, it takes a long time or a coincidence. In this way, only the blood flame, devil light, golden knife, and fiend god can be cultivated in a few days. Thinking of the 2 flying ikshas he killed in the earth lung, he could not help but feel pity. They are good materials for refining fiend god. Even in the white bone fire formation, there are skeletons from ancient times, which can help me refine fiend god. It is a pity that I did not have this identity at that time. As a righteous man, it is not easy to practice those fiend god magic arts. Under the earth lung of the Copper Coconut Island, there was an ancient disaster. Moreover, there was the magnetic peak, which attracted the dark and bad luck of the earth within a radius of tens of thousands of miles. Who knows how many evil spirits from ancient times are hidden here? Zombies and skeletons that have cultivated for many years are good materials for the mystic orthodox sect to refine fiend god magic arts. It is a pity that I did not have this identity at that time. It is not easy for a righteous person to practice those fiend god magic arts. Fortunately, in order to refine a fiend god, he did not need to rely on those vile souls and zombies. The souls of the unorthodox path and demons were also excellent materials. There were 3 living souls on this island now, and there would be more in the future. Chin Ong did not need that many people for his plan. He could find a few blind and unlucky ones and kill them, and he would be able to gather a few living souls. Based on Chin Ang's current situation, Hu Jiaojiao's soul is evil and full of spiritual energy. She is also a cultivator with a good foundation. There is no better person to use to refine the 7 holy fiend gods. The hemp-clothed man has thick bones and a tough body. He can be used to refine fiend god magic arts. As for the venerable of 5 sects, since he planted the blood sea true water, he can only refine him into a blood god. Chin Ong calculated one by one and suddenly felt his eyes light up. He does not need to worry about the materials for the experiment anymore. The way of creation is not necessarily a magic treasure or a panacea. The fiend god magic arts, which is born from death and reborn from death, is a strange existence between living and dead. It may be more in line with the original meaning of creation, like the supreme heavenly demon immortal body that Chin Ong is using now. Isn't it the merit fruit of creation that he is most proud of in this world? It is also the most enlightening to him. Anyway, the endless karma can be borne by this body, and it will not affect the original body. Why should I worry too much? He silently operated his primordial spirit, and the blood river Dharma power communicated with the boundless blood sea, absorbing the blood sea true water that seeped into the void. At the same time, he activated the nameless hellfire in the supreme, heavenly demon body's spiritual consciousness. Although Chin Ang's original self has entered this body, many devil thoughts are still in Gu Haozi's spiritual consciousness. However, there is no original self. Under the pressure, he opened his mouth and spat out a devil fire, igniting the blood sea true water. Seeing the blood flame accumulating, 13 blood-colored talismans were born from it and refined by his primordial spirit. This way, the blood flame can absorb the void chi of vitality and communicate with the blood sea to nourish itself. It no longer needs Chin Ang's Dharma power to supplement it, and this spell can be considered as a small success. Chin Ong opened his mouth and swallowed the blood flame, and turned back to the original form of the great Azura supreme heavenly demon body. He burrowed into the ground and searched for a few unexploited mineral veins in the archipelago. He refined the blood flame into golden chi, and then carved many restrictions, turning the tens of millions of golden chi in these mineral veins into a golden blade devil fire forbidden spell, and cultivated another spell. With the last bit of time left, he used the earth lung white bone een fire stored in the golden ship of creation, and used the blood sea true water to condense the evil spirit and refined it into the white bone 5 een demons. They were like 5 tall white bone demons, and their bodies were as hard as Vajra. They had infinite strength and could change at will, and were powerful. It belonged to the mystic orthodox sex method, and although it was not as secretive as the formless demons, it was still very powerful. It had its own merits compared to Hu Jiaojiao's 6 desires demons. On this day, when Chin Ong was cultivating the demons underground, he saw a grayish-white light flying towards him from afar. Under the blood river Dharma eye, he saw a demon with een fire under his feet, rolling over. His face was full of malevolence, and his eyebrows were vertical, and his green eyes were bright. He looked so long that it could stop a child from crying, and his face was full of bad luck. That person was full of malevolence, and with one look, one could tell that he was a person who slaughtered living beings and committed the sin of killing. The resentment of living beings went deep into his soul, and the roots of evil were deeply planted. It was impossible for him to achieve Tao, but he was a good material to refine evil spirits. Instantly, Chin Ang's heart was filled with malevolence, and he quietly hid his sword light. When the demon passed by his head, a blood-red sword light wrapped around it and pierced through his body. His soul hung on the sword light, and he retracted it. The white bone 5 een demon also had to pounce on him and grab his corpse. Not to mention that he had a good quality, heterodox demon soul, with malevolence rooted in his soul. There was also a resentment of a violent death, and it could be said to be a top-grade material for the demonic path. Just the tyrannical body, the many evil spirits, blood, and bones in the magical treasure pouch made Chin Ang's trip worthwhile. Not only did he improve the White Bone 5 Een Demon by 1 level, but he also refined a Mystic Een Demon to supplement it, and it became even more powerful. Since there were such benefits, Chin Ang hid nearby, and when he saw a heterodox light flying over, he took them by surprise and used his flying sword to ambush them. In 3 days, he killed 4 waves of demons, and the rest were either not guilty of crimes that deserved death, or they still had value, and their luck was not exhausted. Chapter 497. After 3 days, Chin Ang realized that he could no longer do anything. He returned to his room and waited for the Reverend of 5 Desires to invite him. In the afternoon of the same day, a boy came to pay his respects. Chin Ang found him familiar. He seemed to be one of the attendants at the banquet hall a few days ago, but now he had some superficial mana. Chin Ang guessed that it was the corrosive power of the blood god's mana. It was not the right path. Although it was fast and convenient, it was exchanging his life for a moment of supernatural power. Knowing that this was the Reverend of 5 Desires method, Chu Li sighed in his heart. The unorthodox path was indeed not to be regretted, even if they died. Chu Li sighed and waited for a long time. The boy became more and more fearful until his legs were trembling. He did not dare to look at Chin Ang directly. "Why are you so afraid of me?" Chin Ang asked in confusion. The boy knelt on the ground and kowtowed. "I saw your divine might the day before yesterday. You freed Ancestor Baiyan and the other celestial masters. I did not dare to look at you." Only now did Chin Ang understand. With a strange expression on his face, he asked him to lead the way and casually placed a panacea into his bosom as a reward. With the help of the Peiyuan panacea, perhaps there was a chance for him to enter the Tao. It could be considered a lucky chance for him. The boy brought Chin Ang directly to the main hall where the birthday banquet was held. Chin Ang's brows twitched as he pondered. This was not an auspicious place. The 5 obscenities Reverend was here to gather the heretical people. This was an ominous sign. It seemed that there would be a bloody calamity today. Chin Ang's divination had always been accurate. For example, the Purple Cloud Palace, the Mermaid King's Hall, and the White Crag Elders' birthday banquet. He said that the omen was not good and that there would be a bloody disaster. Although he was the one who did it, the results were accurate. If I were to tell the fortune of an unorthodox sect, it would definitely work every time. Because no matter who it was, I would tell them that they would face a bloody calamity. Then I would unsheath my sword and send them to the heavens. I really am an expert in fortune-telling. Everything I say comes true. Chin Ang thought. At this time, there were already more than a dozen people from the unorthodox Devil Tao in the hall. These people were all arrogant and had all kinds of backgrounds. Some were invited by Lord 5 Aphrodisiac, some were invited by Lady Myriad Meow, and some were brought here after hearing the news. None of them were like the leaders of the Alliance, causing the hall to be filled with a foul atmosphere, and the group of evil was in a state of disunity. Chin Ang's arrival was inconspicuous, other than the Reverend of 5 Desires, Hu Jiao Jiao, and the hemp-robed man. Only people like Su Feinyang would notice him. He was just a young man with a childish face. As a member of the evil path, it was unknown whether he was born stupid or deliberately wanted to embarrass the Reverend of 5 Desires. But he actually dared to do such a dirty thing in the hall. Some evil people shouted, "Reverend of 5 Desires, since you invited everyone here, there is no song and dance and no beauties to send them off. What's the point?" Lord of 5 Aphrodisiacs was well aware of the nature of these heretical demons. Before he could say anything, Su Feinyang and a few of the righteous heretical disciples were already annoyed and went straight to the back of the hall. Chin Ang could see through the nature of these demons and thought to himself, "These people are really useless. If the Lord God is counting on them to stir up trouble, then they will be used to train the disciples of the righteous path." At first, I wanted to support a few people from the evil path who are really brave, but now it seems that most of them are not even comparable to the 3 talents and 2 clouds. Chen Ong suddenly felt a little impatient. After glancing at the evil people in the hall, Chen Ong went to the back of the hall. He saw Su Feinyang coming up to him with a kind and friendly face. She did not seem to be surprised by Chen Ang's appearance. She said, "Fellow Taoist, you look like you are a Taoist cultivator. You are different from the common people. May I know your name? Who is your master?" "My name is Su Feinyang, and I am cultivating in Mount Huang's 5 cloud steps." Chen Ong had already changed his appearance. Even someone like Su Feinyang could not see any connection between him and the mysterious perfected cultivator Chen. She only felt that he had a different temperament and was not as weak as the people outside. So she came up to him to befriend him. Chen Ong smiled and said, "My Taoist name is River Styx. I'm a wandering cultivator who travels the world. I don't have a fixed residence yet." Although Su Feinyang was at loggerheads with Mount Amei and befriended many evil people because of the vengeance of the Hunyuan patriarch, she was still a righteous person and did not have any other evil deeds. Otherwise, she would not have befriended so many disciples of the Orthodox sections. She also had the intention to befriend Chen Ong and did not hesitate to lower herself to befriend him. This suited Chen Ang's taste, and they had a pleasant conversation. Su Feinyang was a clever person with a wide range of knowledge. She used to be the only concubine of the Hunyuan patriarch, a grandmaster of the unorthodox sects, so she had high standards. In recent years, she had been focusing on her cultivation in order to seek revenge. She had cultivated the most powerful flying swords left behind by the Hunyuan patriarch, so her mana and supernatural power had improved tremendously. Chen Ang's intelligence was not to be mentioned. As the two conversed, they were both shocked by each other's abilities. Chen Ong did not hide his knowledge, which allowed Su Feinyang to faintly sense that his cultivation base was extraordinary. Her tone was even more enthusiastic. She only mentioned the arrogance and tyranny of the people of Mount Amei from time to time, and talked about all kinds of bullying of the unorthodox sects and wandering cultivators. Her words were vague, but when she saw that Chen Ong was not interested, she did not make it too explicit. She gently put down the topic and looked for another topic. Suddenly, a commotion was heard in front of them. Chen Ong could not help but divert his attention to look over. He heard someone scolding, "What's that in your pocket? Take it out and let me see." He then heard the boy who went to invite him say, "There's nothing else. It's just a spiritual pill that was bestowed by a senior." The voice asked again, "Do you also have a spiritual pill?" Su Feinyang could not help but frown and said, "To think that he wouldn't even let go of the reward bestowed by the hall servant. Who would be so uncouth?" Chen Ong apologized to her and stood up to leave. He saw a burly, dark-skinned man at the front of the hall clutching the boy's neck, trying to break the item in his hand. The boy was also unyielding and held on tightly. If it were not for the spiritual pill that had endless magical effects and could not be harmed by ordinary items, the boy would have crushed it. When he saw Chen Ong coming out from the back of the hall, the boy's eyes lit up and he struggled with all his might. This farce had angered the revered one of 5 obsessions. He shouted, "Revered one of Tiger, you are also a great wandering immortal and a former disciple of the heavenly lewd cult. Why are you bickering with this junior?" The dark-skinned man, revered one of Tiger, scolded, "Revered one of 5 obsessions, if it were not for you, I would have killed him long ago. He is just a boy. How could he have this spiritual pill? He must have stolen it from me. Your subordinates are not clean, so why are you asking me?" As he spoke, he loosened his grip a little, allowing the boy to catch his breath. He hoarsely said, "I did not." In his rage, revered one of Tiger increased the strength in his grip. His eyes flashed fiercely, and he wanted to squeeze the boy to death. He shouted, "Little bastard, you have no right to speak here.